I became a father in 2015. My lifestyle completely changed. Suddenly I was a new dad, and that meant I was home a lot more. I bought a PS4 in 2016, predominantly so I could have a new DVD player, so I could play a new Blu-ray set that wasn't working on my PS3 anymore. Since I had this game console, I figured I'd start playing games on the side. I was very much a casual gamer at this point. I'd play a game or two maybe a year if a new Final Fantasy came out or a friend recommended something good. With the new relevant game console in my home, I started playing a few games here and there, and over time, my gaming time was replacing other downtime hobbies. I was watching a lot less TV, and instead I was finding moments to myself as opportunities to get some gaming in. In 2017, I had seen a YouTube video concerning a game called NieR Automata, which was made by Platinum Games, and I recognized that name from Bayonetta, another game from my past that I very much enjoyed. I did what I only do once or so a year. I pre-ordered it. On the first day, I put it in, and I fell in love. Instant love. The story and the world, and the characters, all within the game, just changed my perspective on video game storytelling. NieR Automata is my favorite game of all time. The end. Once I completed the game, I immediately went on eBay and bought an overpriced copy of NieR Gestalt on PS3, as I was fighting with tons of other people at the time who, like me, really wanted to give the original game a try now that they have an appreciation for the sequel. Upon completing NieR Gestalt, I found out that I was now a NieR evangelist. The series touched me so directly that it spurred me on to be what I would consider a hardcore gamer now, as much as I hate that term. What's the new show on Netflix or Disney Plus, the hot new thing? I couldn't tell you. I don't watch TV. I play games now. I'm always on the hunt for the next game that could leave the same mark on me that the NieR series left. I wanted to make a video on NieR Gestalt, but my first attempt of capturing the PS3 footage left my eyeballs despairing. Seriously though, it isn't just that the game's running at 720p. The aliasing is horrible on that game, so when you capture footage, it takes an already muddy image and makes it look... Ugh. When I heard they're porting the Japanese version of the game, NieR Replicant, to modern consoles and PC, I was ecstatic. My fear was that perhaps the differences between our regional versions of the game might make me enjoy it less. Perhaps they'd do something terrible to ruin the remaster. I'll spoil my thoughts on this version of the game right now. I consider the modern version of NieR Replicant the definitive version of this title. I won't give you any messages of hyperbole about how flawless the game is. The game, much like the original, is still very flawed. However, if you put forth the effort to finish it, it will reward you with a fantastic story and a fantastic cast of characters that you will remember. For some of you, the cast will stick with you for years, like it did for me after originally finishing the game in 2017. This video will be nothing but spoilers. I plan to recap the game as completely as I have the energy for and break down my thoughts on the game and its systems as I go. For some of you, this will be a video to watch before you play NieR Automata. Maybe you wanted to start, but at the same time, you were never too interested in the first game, but you want to know about it anyway. That way you can get the story and move along to the game you really want to play. That's fine. For some, you can watch this and reminisce about the game as I do. I've watched many NieR related videos just to see other people's views on the games, and also partially just to live in that zone of shared happiness with people that also enjoyed these games the same measure as me. So let this be a warning. I will be speaking on NieR Replicant. At times I'll reference NieR Automata, but the game will get another video as it deserves it. So let this be a warning. I'll be speaking on NieR Replicant. At times I'll reference NieR Automata, but that game will get another video as it deserves it. But also this game deserves its own shine as well. I also will be fairly limited in regards to comparisons to the original PS3 version, NieR Gestalt, that I played originally. I played it in 2017, so I might bring up the subject in broad strokes, but I am also not the man to break down individual differences between versions. Also, I'll forewarn you that I'm coming at this based on my interpretation of the game and the game alone. There are supplemental materials, including stage plays and books, that add additional context to the story that I've never experienced, so I'll leave this video purely on my opinions of the game experience. Although I'll give my impressions and opinion on the game, the main purpose of this is to put a retelling of the game on the internet for those who maybe would not play it, but also would be interested in the story. Do I think my video will be the best breakdown of the lore? No. Do I think I could possibly improve on the work of great YouTube creators like Valkyrie Aurora or Mr. Klemps, who have done a fantastic job retelling the stories of these games in the series? No, of course not. I'm simply a man who is inspired by this game series and wants to put forth his best foot forward and extol the virtues of the series in the best way he knows how. I struggled to capture footage or even get the game to run well until the Special K mod came out to save my life. The PC version of this game is terrible. The performance is just bad. The mouse icon won't go away even when using a controller. You have to use NVIDIA controller to lock your frame rate to 60 FPS because over 60 FPS breaks animations and causes enemies to attack you at light speed. It's just a bad PC port. Luckily, Special K locks the frame rate to 60, disables the mouse and removes it from the screen, helps performance, and generally just makes your life better. With that in order, I was ready to capture footage and get going. Also, you might notice some trophies pop up from time to time and the UI looks funky. Special K is why. Some of my footage in here is also bad and I installed it pre-Special K. So if you see that footage, then you've been apprised of why. Now that you know where I'm coming from, let's talk about NieR Replicant. Settle in. It's gonna be a long one. We open on a ruined city covered in what we might assume is snow. The year is 2053. We pan in on a young boy taking refuge in a ruined convenience store. He's awakened by a book tempting him to use its power. He isn't alone. Some strange creatures attack him, and after being defeated, we find out that he actually has a sister lurking in the back. He assures her that he'll keep her safe, and he leaves to fight the next set of foes. He warns her not to touch the book. Unfortunately, this time, he doesn't have what it takes to defeat them. After hitting the ground, he crawls to the book to finally accept its power to defend his sister Yona. This serves as your combat tutorial. It has a hack and slash combat system, with the book adding magical powers that include things like projectile attacks and a giant hand that can swat away big groups of enemies. The original game was created by Cavia and the combat was extremely basic. I think that's being charitable, just calling it basic. I don't think I'd ever describe it as bad. It's more that it was simple to the point of uninteresting. This remaster has been made by Toy Logic and they've spruced it up a bit. All the original simplistic elements of the combat remain, but with flashier and more satisfying animations. The original game had a real problem of feeling mushy. Hitting enemies with a sword felt more like a hammer, or sometimes even worse, it didn't feel like you were making contact at all. This reworked combat looks and sounds more satisfying. Having said that, before I continue with the story, I have to say that in comparison to its sequel, the combat in NieR Replicant remains simplistic. The new coat of paint smoothed over some of, but not all, the rough edges. It's very animation-led, and you won't have any of the responsive input canceling that you might assume you would have access to. Once you attack, you're committed to that action. That can lead to a more clunky feeling gameplay, especially with the heavier weapons that have longer animations. I won't be mentioning combat too much more throughout this video, but I wanted to address it early on before I got to what I believe is the important part of the game, its story. After defeating his enemies, the young boy returns to his sister in the ruins, and she starts showing signs of an illness. She also used the book for its powers and is now paying the consequences. We now cut to 1412 years later. The brother and sister duo are still together, although they're now dressed in a much stranger fashion and in some kind of medieval fantasy setting. The boy does not have a canonical name, as you name him as the player, so for the rest of this walkthrough, I will refer to him as NieR. His sister is named Yona, After all these years later, it would appear she is still suffering from the illness they refer to as the Black Scrawl. At this point, you have questions. Are the two of them the exact same characters as our intro? Did the book give them long lives, allowing them to still be around? For now, you just have to push these questions to the back of your mind. At this point, you'll navigate around the village, meeting all of your side characters in town. Devila and Popola will be your main quest givers in town. The two twins might be familiar to some who took the path I did, who came from the sequel first. Popola gives you a trivial quest to collect some mutton from the sheep outside of town. This main quest is a precursor to the type of task you'll be asked to do as side quests for the remainder of the game. This task is a setup to show you outside of town in the Northern Plains, but also to set you up a protagonist who is canonically a goody two-shoes. He wants to find a cure for his sick sister, but in the interim, he'll do anything he can to help his neighbors out. As for the side quests in the game, there are 70 total. In the sake of being thorough, I completed them all. I could not advise the same for everyone else. I'll break down the quests that tickled my fancy later. For now, NieR gets home from his day of sheep killing and speaks to his sister. She's been at home alone all day and is desperate for her brother's attention. She wants a fun story. He tells her of a very special flower known to make its finder rich. Some even say it has healing powers. She's intrigued. She asks if perhaps it could help her out. He obliges and says yes, perhaps it could help her as well. In the morning, NieR goes back out to speak to Popola for his next day's task and helps with another small group of enemies out in the Northern Plains blocking a bridge. When he returns, he finds that Yona's missing. It turns out that she went out questing for her own lunar tear. In order to find her, we're going to have to venture out to the Lost Shrine. Now might be a good time to point out that this game has one of the most incredible soundtracks of any game I've ever played. The Lost Shrine has this chanting that is soothing and off-putting at the same time. Every area of the game has its own unique music, and it leaves an indelible impression on you. I hadn't played this game since 2017, and each track was like a warm embrace from a loved one that I hadn't seen in ages. The shrine is the first real combat challenge of this game. These strange enemies you've been fighting have now been named thanks to Popola. They're called Shades. We know nothing of their origins other than their bad news. The Lost Shrine is a straight climb through groups of these shades until we reach a cathedral-like room with Yona held captive behind some kind of barrier. Behind some kind of barrier is a strange book of unknown provenance. Once the barrier is broken, it boasts of its power, and eventually NieR agrees to accept its help to fight off frickin' Frack, and also to penetrate the barrier containing Yona. Our merry band barely escapes to the entrance of the shrine as it starts collapsing. She apologizes for being a problem as she just wanted to find a lunar tear so she could help her brother for once instead of the other way around. At this point, her illness kicks in high gear. Grimoire Weiss is knowledgeable about the Black Scrawl, but not how to fix it. So the two visit Devila, who is surprised to meet Grimoire Weiss, as the song that she was singing was actually about him. It turns out there's an old fable about a white book who saves the world from the calamity brought from a black book, Grimoire Noir. So this kicks off the story in earnest. NieR and Weiss will be off to fight enemies and unlock sealed verses in an attempt to cure Yona and save the world from this plague. Or I should say, this could be kicking off the story in earnest, but if you're anything like me, it's side quest time. I want to break down some of the side quests that I found interesting in this game. There are plenty of collect X items quests, and I feel like they need no discussion, but there are some quests that deserve mentioning. Some of these are worth doing because they unlock alternative content. Some of them are interesting because they add context to the world, or they just make you think. Early on, you get a request to kill a wild boar out in the Northern Plains. If you take this on, when you get it, you're still a little bit low level, so killing the boar is very challenging. The more important part is that upon completing this quest, you can ride boars in the open spaces of the game for the game's duration. Also, boars can do this. enough said. Fisherman's Gambit. There are 9 total Fisherman's quests during this game, and they're all worth doing as soon as possible, because fishing is probably the single best way to earn currency in the game, and the fishing is chill as fuck. Also, the old man who gives you the quest cracks me the hell up. His training is unorthodox. I like him. First half of the game, you can only do the first 5 quests, and there are 9 total, so you'll figure this out in a second. There's an old man by the blacksmith who has a missing dog. You find the poor dog surrounded by shades and is dead in the northern plains with some kind of plant in his mouth. Upon returning to the village, you plan to tell the dog's owner about its fate, but that's when you find the grandson of the man in his stead. Turns out he passed. The boy's amazed when he's shown... God damn it. The boy is amazed when he's shown the plant from the dog's mouth. It was his granddad's medicine. He thanks you for telling about this, and your quest is completed. In the end, mechanically, this is just a fetch quest. But I've thought about this quest as an example of how this series handles interactions ever since I played the first game. It left a lasting impression with me, and these games, you have to be prepared to say goodbye to anyone you meet. There's lots of down notes. But the thought of this dog going to fetch this medicine for this dying man and then dying himself, and then of course the man dying immediately after, it just, all of that, it speaks to me. At one point, Yona requests that you collect some venison and wheat so you can make a special meal. Again, NieR is canonically lovable as hell and collects the items in spite of the fact that Yona is not a very good cook. Vice seems to note the discomfort as NieR forces the food down his throat, but Yona is happy at least. And she is adorable. Like, even if NieR wasn't canonically a good boy, I would not want to upset that poor girl. She is so sweet. There's going to be more quests that I'll address later, but these are the early winners in the prize pool for the first half. Let's continue the main story. Popola's next task leads us to a place called the Aerie. In a secluded location just outside of the Aerie, we find this universe's version of a trailer park. Inside the hovel is a whole necklace made out of lunar tears. Something tells me that we'll meet the occupant of this dwelling eventually. We ignore this for now and continue inside the Aerie. The design of this place is bitchin'. Rows of dwellings built precariously on the side of sheer cliff faces. There are small shades causing problems around here when we arrive. The people are holed up in their homes and are very distrustful of you. Let's just say the people in this village are not as friendly as NieR is accustomed to at his house. The chief shoos us away, and as we're leaving, we take one more peek at those lunar tears. A woman in lingerie accosts us.
Vice? Why is that lady in her underwear?
I fear we have greater issues to deal with.
She's a tough fighter, and it would appear she's part shade. Let's rumble. After a while, your fight is interrupted by the biggest shade we've seen so far. I was disappointed that no one comments on the fact that he clearly has neck testicles. This battle wounds him, but he skulks away after trading blows with the woman. She is exhausted, and NieR and Vice decide to help her out. She reveals her name.
My name's Canal.
Before we leave, she has parting words.
Oh, and one more thing. The monster back there, it's mine. Stay the hell away from it.
Next up, we visit a town of seafront to catch fish for Yona that could have healing properties for her. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. But it does introduce you to this beautiful town. This is another hub for more side quests and vendors. If you want to grow things in your garden, the quest to do so is in this town, and you can also buy moonflower seeds which you can breed to eventually grow a lunar tear. Not shown me growing a lunar tear because I cannot get it to grow. Okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about that. Forget that. We'll definitely remove that in editing. The main draw for this town for me was the Lighthouse lady. You can hear people all over the city muttering under their breath about the salty old bird who tends the lighthouse. You first encounter her on the beach, and she manipulates you to go to the post office for her to get a letter. I liked her instantly. You return to her at the lighthouse, and she's less than grateful seeming to have her letter returned. Also, people in this universe seem to take the postman's oath pretty seriously. If you're a creeper, you can read the contents of the letter, and it's from her lover across the ocean. He's deeply apologetic for not returning to her. She waits patiently, tending to the lighthouse, waiting for his arrival after many years of loneliness. As you come back to Seafront numerous times throughout your travels, you'll collect several letters for her, and it very much explains her temperament. Eventually, as you're helping the postman, at one point you discover the truth. You find the death certificate of a man who has supposedly been writing the letters for years. The letters are forgeries. The mailman has been writing the letters to the Lighthouse Lady. His father did the same before him. For years, they've continued this farce to keep her busy and tending the lighthouse. Upon talking to him, I believe the mailman when he says he just couldn't bear to break her heart. One day, when you pay the Lighthouse Lady a visit, she's in bed. Sadly, she's been afflicted with the black scrawl. The only thing keeping her clinging to this world is the thought of seeing her lover one final time. It's at this point where you can choose how to handle the situation. I chose to tell the dying woman the truth. Her lover is dead, and the town has perpetuated a lie in the interest of keeping her happy and motivated. Surprisingly, she is not mad. She's grateful to the people of this town that they cared enough to do anything at all, even if it was a lie. Before you leave, she requests that you not tell the townspeople that she found out about the lie. As you take your leave from the lighthouse, it'll prove to be the last time you see her alive. When you next visit the mailman, he confirms that she fell victim to the black scrawl. He asks if we told her the truth. You can choose to tell him what you want. I went with the old lady's wishes and told him that I kept his secret. This whole episode is truly amazing and emblematic of Yoko Taro's games. You fall in love with a character, warts and all, and then they're ripped away from you once you've built up a strong emotional attachment. You never know that woman's name. Even until the very end, we're still calling her the Lighthouse Lady, yet we have more reason to root for her than most main characters in other games. Rest in peace, Lighthouse Lady. Wipe tears from eyes. Next, we head up to the junk heap. NieR wants to build a better weapon, and Popola directs him to the two boys who run a junk shop inside the junk heap. In order to fix your weapon, Jacob, the older brother, needs you to collect the materials in the heart of the mountain. This area is unique as it's the only zone in the game filled to the brim with robots. These robots are very lost in space in design as opposed to the sleek and cool robots of other sci-fi properties like Lost in Space. This area also features something that will be used in the sequel heavily, which is a change in perspective. Gameplay turns from traditional over-the-shoulder third-person combat to an isometric view. This can turn combat into a more shoot-'em-up style at times, and it's really refreshing. I imagine if you played the original game at release, it would have been really impactful, as there's nothing else I can compare to what that game did at that time. During the course of the game, you'll return to the junk heap seemingly immeasurable times. This is the only area in the game to farm certain upgrade materials, and they're damn lucky this music is absolutely incredible and perfectly thematic. There are definitely times I think I might have gone crazy doing another run through here if it weren't for the banging ass track acting like a metronome for my Robo Armageddon. You return with the upgrade materials for your weapon, and Jin says he'll work on it for you. His little brother Gideon is in the background being a little shit. Just because mommy has been missing after going into the junk heap a week ago, of course. Everyone's got an excuse. Of course, our good boy NieR takes up the cause to go back in and find her. Vice scoffs at this behavior for the first of many times in our journey. Jacob thanks you and gives you an elevator access code, but there is definitely something he's keeping from us. We kill many more robots and harvest many of their components. At the end of this trail is a robo giant boss. What the hell kind of installation is this place? This boss really is simple, but at the same time it's super fun. Classic Xbox 360 era fight, really. Shoot his hands till he has no hands left, dodge lasers and rockets, and then throw bombs into his open mouth once it's exposed. It's straightforward, but this kind of stuff is definitely what I imagine inspired Platinum Games to want to work with Yoko Taro on a sequel. Eventually, the giant robot head has had enough. The defeat of this enemy leads to unlocking another sealed verse for Vice, bringing us one step closer to helping Yona, but just as importantly, unlocking another spell to use. At the end of the trail, NieR and Vice come across this.
It's a woman, and she's dead.
I fear we have discovered the delinquent mother.
Who's this person?
It's a man.
This bag has nice clothes in it, and me too. Why would she stuff here?
It seems she abandoned her children to seek comfort in the arms of a swain.
Oh, that's awful.
Damn, Vice really has a way with words. Again, we have a choice, and we can either lie to young Gideon, or we can tell him the truth, which I chose to do. Your mother's in heaven now, boy. Jacob wants to know if his mother died alone. He was actually aware of his mother's affair. He handles this in a very adult way. Well, good luck with all that, kids. From here, we head back to the Aerie because there are shades there, and Vice and NieR believe one of them may be hiding a sealed verse. When they arrive, Kaine is already fighting off shades by her place. Kaine decides to come with you after this, defeating them and clearing them out. That's a good thing, because that monstrous shade is back, and her powers could not hurt in this battle. It's at this time when you get a taste of Kaine's vernacular. She has the mouth of a sailor, and this will persist for the remainder of the game.
Rot in hell, you fucking asshole!
Did you just say what I think you said?
I'll tear out your goddamn eyes and piss in the sockets!
Good sweet Lord! I have never heard such a thing.
Vice will constantly call her a hussy, and a myriad of other names for her choice of attire and complain at her vulgarity. But it doesn't seem to slow Kaine down at all. Even as the area is being attacked by shades, the people are still concerned with Kaine being in the village. They blame her for summoning the shades in spite of the fact that she's the one fighting them. They're all calling her half-breed amongst other insults. The people of the area are hard to root for. But then again, NieR is a good boy, so saving the day is kind of his deal. This fight has multiple phases, and at one point the shade starts speaking in the voice of an old woman, Kaine's grandma to be specific. She asks Kaine why she continues to fight when it could be so much easier to give up. Kaine responds like this.
Is that it? Are you finished yet?
Don't speak to your grandma like...
You're going to stop talking now. And then I'm going to slowly over cram hand and send your goddamn bitch ass chest and pull your heart!
Did I mention that Kaine was kind of vulgar? NieR is the one who finishes the fight though, as he impales the giant shade. Kaine is flung off in the distance as a consequence, however. Vice speculates that she does not have much left to live for. Her dream sequence verifies this.
Come over here! Don't, you're stronger than that! Don't you dare give up!
Woman, it's more trouble.
That's it, come on!
You're to live, Kaine!
My... What? I had my revenge. Now it's over.
Now here, this is rich.
Ice!
We help you inside mad quest vengeance. Now you think to sit up you. A fighter such as skill, just cursed with such head. True warrior would fight. They would give all service to their friends.
Friends. Right.
He's right. Kaine, we're friends now.
See, that was hardly the
Okay, then what is the point? Kaine, need your help. Will that fight?
Well, you cannot simply outright prize a proper order matters. You must ease into the carefully considered words, mencionations. How dare you, grim vice, or Kaine.
Then.
Just a brief night, main.
Yes. Bite. I can't just live forever.
You mean coming us with us?
These swords need a true home. But you'll even do now.
She's lived for revenge. Now that revenge is secure. What more now to do? She hears the words of Vice and NieR pulling her back to the light. This whole scene was worth sharing in its totality. Another sealed verse in our pocket. Where to next? Well, Kaine knows someone who's had the black scrawl. Perhaps they found a cure or know some more about the disease. Off to the kingdom of Facade. On the journey through the desert, a group of wolves attack you. After fighting off a few of them, the wolf pack leader howls in the distance, calling them off. We will meet again. Upon arriving to Facade, the group are met with a giant gate blocking their path. It would appear Kaine is on friendly terms with someone at least. She explains she saved a local kid from a pack of wolves, and ever since the city has welcomed her with open arms. She laments that something must be wrong if they let her in here. Somewhat akin to the statement of, I'd never join a club that would have me as a member. She warns you that the people here speak a crazy language, and they all wear masks, and she just kind of hangs out at the gate. Kaine always hangs back outside of the city. Not just here in Facade, though. Every city. She's the perpetual outsider. Vice and NieR explore the city and cannot communicate with any of its citizens. The language is simply impenetrable. The duo make it to the door of the castle to speak to the king, but cannot gain entry. Just more masked individuals with no means to communicate. They trudge away with their tails between their legs after coming all this way. And just when you're about to give up, at the city gates they meet a clumsy masked girl. We help her pick up her dropped items, and it turns out she lacks the ability to communicate by speech, so she uses gestures to speak. This is exactly what the duo needed as an inn. She introduces herself as Fira, and she becomes your guide through the city. She shows the two around the city, showing you important shopkeepers and destinations, but just as importantly, she explains the premise of the Kingdom of Facade. The town has an uncountable number of rules. Obviously rules about wearing masks, but also rules down to small things like people not being able to live on level ground, hence the step structure of the city. Fira tells us that the town must be viewed from a sand skiff by outsiders before being able to buy anything from the shops. The boys protest such a silly rule. She explains they just passed rule 124,046 earlier in the month. These people love their rules. Get used to it, pals. My words, not hers. You take the tour, and thanks to her help, Weiss can now be a translator for the townspeople. After all this preamble, it turns out that the king, who allegedly had the Black Scroll, has since passed. Perhaps they cannot help with a cure, but we should be able to at least talk to the remaining prince. Oh wait, The prince isn't taking visitors? Yeah, no problem. I really just want to do a massive long tour of a city you people won't give me any access to. We retreat back to the front gate, again. It turns out Fira was the girl that Kaine saved, and Vice is blown away that the hussy would do anything so admirable. This conversation is interrupted by disturbed town guards who are upset as the prince has gone missing. This is very against the rules. The guardsmen need to gather and go hunt him down, according to the rules. Oh, but he went missing in the Barren Temple, where none of the townspeople are allowed to set foot, thanks to the rules? Man, what a catch-22. I'll let you take a stab at what happens next. So anyways, the group decides to take care of it, and Kaine abuses a rule regarding being owed a debt because she saved Fira. The group has to cross through a barren desert with a literal active desert storm going on with Fira as a guide. This is perfect. Quality first impression, Prince. Okay, the Barren Temple. I really enjoyed this place, the original playthrough, and I did again the second time through. Each room is some kind of challenge. You'll get a message displaying some kind of outlawed technique, like no leaping rabbit or no stationary owl, and then you have to solve the puzzle or combat challenge in the room without jumping or standing still. Should you jump on accident or stand still in a moment, you'll teleport to the beginning of the room and it will reset. This is by no means deeply complex, but I found it quaint, and the limitations placed on you as a player made for a bit more intrigue. Kaine, however, was not a fan of these rules. A couple rules in, she disobeys one about magic spewing bat, and she gets thrown in the penalty box for it. One might even say she was downright abducted. It's all good though. If you've seen this broad fight, you know she'll be fine. At the bottom of the rabbit hole, you encounter one of the fun bosses that will definitely remind you of its sequel if you played that. Firstly, you see the prince floating in one of the abduction boxes. The fight itself is a series of rotating boxes with weak points. Your magic will be key here. After picking off the glowing boxes, the tower will drop to another level. After all the levels of boxes have been collapsed, they realign themselves into a giant torso with glowing hands for phase 2. Again, it's all about targeting the glowing boxes and avoiding the intensifying clutter hell of ballistics shot at you. Kaine rejoins us and tells our enemy that she will, quote, kill the shit out of you after destroying his hands, and moves to phase 3, and it will be more of the same with a simple geometric pattern this time. NieR's got this shit though. With his boss defeated, Vice and NieR gain another steel verse, and the prince is saved. Who doesn't love a good Zelda reference? Turns out the reason why the prince did something so dangerous is that he wanted to retrieve the royal mask from inside the temple. Things have not been going well in Facade. Trade has come to a halt and water and food supply are short. Our young prince feared he could not project a strong image of a king that the people needed. Now he has the royal mask to project the powerful image he needed. He repeats a mantra which has been repeated by the people in town several times now. Rules do not exist to bind you. They exist so that you may better know your freedoms. These words were from his father. He may now take his seat as true king. The kingdom now owes this group a great debt, one which the new king will certainly not forget. He asks the group what they would ask. NieR replies that they pass Law 0. If someone doesn't like a law they propose, they may propose to change it. The new king agrees, but assures the group that he won't soon forget their selfless actions on his behalf. This place may seem backwards and all the masks are kind of silly, but I spent all this time breaking down this fairly meticulously because I appreciate the interesting design of the city and the interesting premise of the outlying nation with their interesting culture and superstitious practices. This won't be the last we hear of the masked people of Facade. For now, though, we return to visit Yona. When you return to see Yona, she's ecstatic to see her brother. She asks if he would really stay with her now that he's home. You have the choice to answer yes or no. I have no idea what a no answer looks like because I'm not a fucking monster. I'm fairly certain a no answer submits you into some kind of database. All Yona wants in this world is to spend time with her brother, and he loves her back endlessly. But in his efforts to help her, he also neglects her. She doesn't care about NieR unlocking the next sealed verse. What she wants is to make him some lousy dinner and then have it eat it in her company. Yoko Taro is a genius because I wanted to slap some sense into these characters at times, and all that means is that his manipulation was successful. Depending on how quickly you've been moving throughout the game as a player, at this point you're somewhere around 5 to 10 hours in. It's early, and you already care about these characters, and if you don't, well, I don't know what to tell you. Getting back to the moment, we agree to stay with Yona, and in the evening, NieR has a dream. It's very cryptic, but it definitely featured someone exclaiming something about a sealed verse. Yona's perky, though. She had a strange dream as well that sounds very familiar to his. The only words she could decipher from her dream were forest of myth and dream. This instigates a meeting from Popola. She got a strange letter from the forest of myth, which is a real place, surprising no one. His letter looks like this. Someone has dreams on his mind. This leads to NieR and Weiss, who approach the elder statesman of the village. This is the first text-based adventure of the game. Its sequel had one of these segments. This game has multiple segments that lead to a lot of reading. All of it is fascinating to me, and they manipulate you emotionally by having this incredible soundtrack playing in the background of all these segments, where in truth you're just sitting there reading. I usually read in dead silence, but this game makes me reconsider this approach, as adding thematic music to the reading experience really ups the ante. So I'm going to give you my best CliffsNotes version of this interaction. I'm not going to scroll the text in front of you. I'll probably just put static images on the screen, just because I want you to just pay attention to the story and not be distracted how my words are different than the screens. I don't want to have to match up the text and try and sync their story with mine, so just take it easy, think this is a podcast, and listen to the story as best as my shitty voice can tell it. The mayor warns them to be aware of contagious words. As soon as they hear this, though, it's too late. They've been affected by what is known as the death dream. The entire village is locked in a dream from which they cannot wake. And from the moment Weiss and NieR interacted with the mayor, they were instantly sucked into his dream. They do something clever here, where they have the words pop up as characters are talking, and the characters are aware of the narration. They are aware of the words that you, as the player, are reading. Like the actual words, not just the context or the meaning. The mayor admits he's been trying to escape for some time now, and he's trying to understand the dream to free his townspeople. Weiss is the one who cracks the code, as he basically gives him the speech from Dream Warriors. In your dream, if you believe it to be true, then it's true. Weiss and NieR separate from the mayor and venture deeper into the dream forest. After ages of walking, the forest becomes alive with so many insects that a cacophony of noise deafens NieR. Eventually, the echoing sounds of the bugs mutate into an audible din that could be understood. The forest was communicating. It asks a riddle. 1 with it is lacking. 2 with it is ideal. 3 with it is dangerous. What is it? The answer is a secret. The next riddle starts. As the sound of insects fall away, the forest accepts him. I enter through a window but break no glass. When night falls, I vanish. What am I? Well, that one's easy. Sunlight, of course. They find a cottage with an old man in it. And what do you know? Another riddle. I have 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, but end the night with 3. What am I? The answer, a man. The man from the cottage throws his cloak off to reveal himself as the mayor. He tells NieR that he's not the actual mayor, but a representation of him. He tells NieR that a long time ago he met a different version of him who is also not him, and congratulates the duel for breaking the death dream. NieR does not understand this idea of having met the mayor before, because clearly he hasn't. The mayor disappears and the duo come across the real mayor at the forest entrance, who's grateful to have his dream ended. The problem is that his dream was done, but he still had villagers stuck in their own dreams requiring help. He shows the guys a tree at the center of the village that is known to contain a sealed verse. Well, you have our attention now. So I guess we're going to have to break the death dream for these villagers now. The first one is a prisoner in their mind, and as NieR shows up to save him, his mind has created a literal prison and you have to direct the crew out of it. Meanwhile, it's raining, so you are essentially on a time-sensitive heist. The game will give you options to navigate a maze. It will sound something like, proceed north, or head east down a corridor. Some of these dead ends show outlines of a mountain of crumbling corpses. Another path leads to paintings of ornately clothed people from a lost era. The whole time you're navigating this text-based maze, it's raining heavily. Each decision adds on water, and if you take the wrong path too many times, you'll drown and get a game over. Eventually, you break down the last door of the catacomb and save the prisoner in the dream. She's grateful, and you're equally grateful to be successful if you're anything like me. Next villager's dream. The boys are describing a skyline of skyscrapers. They don't know what they are, but they're accurately describing them while heading to a city of art, a city surrounded by sand. The boys continue through the desert chasing the city. NieR describes the skyscrapers as sculptures with panes of glass that stretch to the sky. They do not think of this as a city that people lived in, as they see the building as works of art. They describe beautifully carved works of red, amber, and green dangling over every street. Obviously, we know they're streetlights, but NieR and Weiss are none the wiser. They eventually stumble upon 3 statues of humans. One is called Alpha, one is called Beta, and one is called Gamma. Only one form is real, the others are false. The real form will always tell the truth. The false ones will always lie. Alpha tells you that he's real. Beta says, stop lying. Alpha's a fake. I am the real one. Gamma responds that Beta is a fake and that he is the real one. We respond that Beta is the real one, and Weiss confirms that's the correct answer. His answer is the only one that could be true while the others were lying. This frees the villager from his sleep. The boys ask him why he would dream up a place like that. The villager does not know why he would dream it up, but it just seems familiar. Weiss confirms that he has the same feeling of deja vu in spite of it being impossible. This is the first time we've had a serious thread leading us back to questions that we had at the beginning of the game. For now, though, this will remain a lingering thread of a thought because we have something else important to do. Popola gives NieR instructions to find the man she hired to repair the canal to set up a ferry system. I did not remember this segment, and I later confirmed that this is a new character added to this version of the game. We track him down in Seafront. He is in no condition to do any construction, as he's distraught because his wife has gone missing. She most likely left him after an argument they had. He tells us that she will most likely be tracked down by her distinct red bag that matches the one that he carries with him. NieR promises to go hunting her down in spite of the reaction he incites from Weiss. We track her down as last being seen on the plains outside Seafront. We find her distinct red bag next to a pack of shades. We fear for the worst. I guess we have to inform the man. He confirms that it is indeed her bag, and now he's truly inconsolable. She shows up out of nowhere in perfect health. This is how we find out what started the fight. I'm convinced there is no right answer here. After ages of fighting, he explains to her that he got a new job, and this turns the tide of the conversation very positive. The Red Man has now become the Canal construction man. For now, the Red Bag Man arc is complete. Heavy emphasis on for now. We check in on Yona when we come back into town, and she explains she's been writing letters back and forth with a pen pal named Emil. Yona asks us to help his friend. He's sick and he needs our help. In spite of the inner turmoil caused in NieR by knowing Yona has a boyfriend, he keeps helping anyways, because that's what he does. He always helps. We've passed this creepy mansion several times going back and forth from seafront. Finally, the gates open so we can properly investigate. Outside the front door, we're greeted by the butler. So far, this game has clear and heavy Zelda inspiration. It has a top-down shooter inspiration. It features text-based adventure gameplay. This portion is clearly inspired by Resident Evil, and it wears it on its sleeve. Once inside the mansion, the camera becomes fixed. The music keeps a haunting tone as we explore around the rooms. Kaine has nerves of steel. She literally falls asleep in this clear and obvious ghost house. Meanwhile, our typically boisterous book seems to be cracking at the seams a bit.
I not like this one bit.
What's the matter, Vice? Scared?
We find a courtyard with stone statues of people. NieR notes that they look like they're in pain. After finding several keys and opening several doors a la Resident Evil, we encounter a young boy dressed in a very old-fashioned garb, not befitting this setting. He's also wearing a blindfold. He identified NieR from the weight and sound of his footsteps. He introduces himself as Emil, the master of the manor. He also clarifies that he did not, in fact, write the letters to Yona. As Vice and NieR approach him, Emil warns them to stay back, as anything he looks at will turn to stone. That was definitely the impression we got from the stone people in the courtyard, and now that suspicion is confirmed. However, it's also clear that this kid means no harm. He hands us a skeleton key to the manor, and we return to speak to the butler. On our hunt to find the butler, we discover a likeness of a butler standing idly in one room. This is a dead ringer to the man who introduced himself at the front door, but something's wrong. NieR and Vice fight off a couple shades haunting this residence, much like a ghost would do. Also, there's this sink that fills with blood. No real story relevance, just cool. Eventually, they meet the butler, who confirms that what you already assumed was probably true. He wrote the letters to Yona, but it was important to him to try and get help from Master Emil. Also, just as you assumed, he is likely some kind of robot. The butler begs NieR and Vice to go defeat some shades controlling an area of the manor, housing the probable cure for Emil's eyes. NieR says yes because NieR will always say yes. I know it seems like I'm a broken record right now, but I will keep pounding this in, because NieR is a good boy. Now and every subsequent time a favor is asked of him, NieR will always say yes. If you're doing some menial side quest that's bothering you and it feels like a waste of time, just remember that NieR would do this with no questions asked. I love him. Just as a reminder of how Resident Evil this place is, this hallway features portraits of the residents of the manor who morph over time as you pass through. Dope. Once at the library, a book comes out and puts up a vicious fight. It's defeated and it unlocks the final sealed verse. It's also a research report on petrification, but it's written in some kind of code. The butler promises to do the necessary research. Before the group departs, Kaine and Emil have a sweet moment in front of the mansion. I have to play this whole cutscene as it's important for the context of the characters involved.
Emil, listen to me. What is it? What is it? Kaine? You're not a sin. Ever be ambition. Of you. What's this? What's... She made? How did you... This arm, current weapon. I thought only known it until earned my revenge and... what happened? Figured it was already over. There's a reason I'm alive. Arm is alive. There's a reason eyes too. I know. But if the shade should ever...
Also, there's this.
You exchanged some word to me and hopefully it was nothing inappropriate for a young man of his age. Take the truth, hussy.
Shut up.
This game is heartwarming and thought-provoking, but it's also funny as hell too. As NieR lies Yona down, he tells her that he's unlocked the final seal verse. Now his concern is finding Grimoire Noir. Yona worries for NieR's safety, but also she pleads for him not to hate her because of her terrible disease. She has immense guilt for what she's put NieR through. Absolutely heartbreaking. NieR leaves to speak to Popola and asks if she has any extra medicine for Yona. Popola asks that we retrieve some vapor moss from the southern gate. Once at the gate, Emil runs up and collapses. We cut to Popola, who thinks it's just fatigue as Emil had to navigate all the way here without sight. He awakens and he can feel the air vibrating. There's an impending shade invasion. The shades break through the main gate and it's time to defend your home ground. Your neighbors are being attacked and brutalized, and it feels so different as this village has always felt so safe and secure. This is by far the most giant shade you've dealt with yet. It requires multiple stages of wearing him down. You fight this thing right down Main Street, but it keeps right on moving. Gradually it inches its way to Popola's library where Yona's being held. You defeat it right at the foot of the library when you hear Yona's cries coming from the interior. More shades to be dealt with. Emil and Kaine fight by your side. Your moments of success are short-lived though. The beast from the outside simply refuses to die. Instead of killing it, the decision is made to knock it into the basement. This works temporarily until this happens.
Give me the key! No!
Dear God.
Yoda!
Eventually, Grimoire Weiss is transported to some kind of nether dimension where he can converse with the Black Book Grimoire Noir. He says that they are one and the same, two sides of the coin. He also explains the winged Dark One is the Shadowlord himself. Noir accuses Weiss of forgetting his original purpose of serving the Shadowlord and fusing together to set free the shades upon the world. The Shadowlord himself has set in motion this quest to collect the seal verses. Suddenly, Kaine cuts through the darkness.
Become one.
Weiss! You dumbass!
Kaine.
Sucking sense, you rot. You're gonna be so. Maybe I'll rip your page one by one. Or maybe when the goddamn burn. How someone can such a big smart big brain get hit like a size big little bit. Oh Shadowlord, I shadow you Shadowlord. Come on, Karen, give her high some sloppy kiss, Shadowlord. Now pull your head out of your gas and ass and starting hacking us.
Turns out Kaine's salty language has an actual function after all. Emil makes his appeal to Vice as well. Even in NieR's weakened state, he musters what he can to stand and fight. Eventually, the powers of friendship overcome, and Vice wakes from his trance.
For the last time, my name is Memoir Vice, and it ought not to deviate it.
Vice!
Good to see you, I'm Kaine. Though I don't think anyone has accused me of being a before. And we men.
Vice, you okay?
I believe I could ask the same question now.
Impa. We must be cast one.
I don't like you. And nothing to do with you. Besides, I have my opinions.
You're bad.
Of they're weak, and they wily. It's almost too much trouble. But I shall fight by that side now and forever.
Vice, thanks.
Vice has chosen his side, and it's with his friends and not some book. Vice and NieR dispatch some shades and put down Noir. Noir has removed their ability to use sealed verses, so that means melee combat all the way. This remix Song of the Ancients makes my heart feel things. As we do damage to Noir, it slowly unlocks the sealed verses so we can use magic. This fight is trivial after that giant beast fight that took so long to conquer before. Depending on how efficiently you fought that, you could be very low on consumable healing items right now. This fight causes the roof to start collapsing. During the entirety of this fight against Noir, Kaine is holding the door closed for that monster that wouldn't die. Even once we think we've defeated Grimoire Noir, the Shadowlord intervenes and NieR is broken down to near death in an effort to save Vice. This is NieR Replicant. The good guys do not always win. The Shadowlord escapes with Yona as NieR bleeds on the floor. The good guys lost this time. Kaine cannot hold the beast in the basement forever. She asks Emil to petrify her to lock the creature up. You are left with two options. Neither of them are palatable. But Emil opens his eyes for the first time in a long time, and this happens.
Kaine.
No more crying. Okay? Grow strong. Never lose hope.
Spare me the by I see. I would like more than this to kill you.
I doubt it.
God damn, this game hits. Rewatching the footage, this will be the third time I've seen this, including the first game, and I'm still devastated. This concludes Act 1.
Wait for me. Kaine. I swear.
Although the group has lost the battle, there are many more to be fought in the war. Cut to 5 years later. The opening cutscene gives us a taste for the change in the tone in the village. Inside the village gates, someone has been slain by shades that are now wearing full-blown armor. NieR has grown substantially, and he's now dressed like the 5th Musketeer. I'm not hating. I really dig it, but I mean, where did he get those boots? He can now wield two-handed weapons. I always like this thematic touch, as in the first act he was young and therefore not strong enough to wield the heaviest weapons in the game. Two-handed weapons can be handy as they possess much higher armor break, and the shades in Act 2 have much more armor. However, you'll notice from the following footage that once I leveled some of the letter weapons to do more damage, I just used those and favored using those to get maneuvering behind them. Much like a Souls game, once you start your animations, you're locked in those animations, so using a slow swing and heavy weapon can leave you very vulnerable with no animation canceling. The thing is, this game doesn't have all the considerations of a Souls game when it comes to, like, actually capitalizing on that kind of combat system, personally. So for me, I'll leave the decision for how to play or their judgment on the quality of the combat to their own discretion. The first playthrough I did in the original game, I favored lances, but I didn't tinker around too much in this playthrough. As I've established before, the story carries this experience for me, so the combat's simply an obstacle that I gotta overcome to get to my next story beat. As NieR moves about the city, it's plain to see that the naivete characteristic of NieR is gone very early on. He's been looking for Yona for 5 years, and his hatred for the Shades has only been further stoked as they invade the village and hurt his neighbors. When we re-enter the library, there's a reminder of the past with Kaine still frozen in stone, and the collapsed roof is still visible on the floor. Popola compliments NieR and tells him he's grown so much taller. Meanwhile, NieR remarks that Popola hasn't changed a bit since the moment he met her. She does not know how to take a compliment, so she changes the subject to the fact that NieR got a letter from Emil saying he might have a lead on depetrifying Kaine. Off to Emil's mansion. Emil, much like Popola, has not aged a day. He tells you that he's found a secret area of his house. There's a planning room entrance in the courtyard. We get another new wrinkle in the gameplay as the camera turns more of an isometric style in this underground bunker, which has a very sterile hospital style aesthetic. It's loaded with shades, so you and Emil push through while thinning their numbers. At the ends of certain gauntlets, you'll obtain certain files for something called Project Gestalt or Plan Snow White. They reference weapons numbers 6 and 7. Every one of these files seems to weaken Emil, as if he's coming to from a trance and remembering something devastating that he's long since forgotten. One of the papers clearly features pictures of Emil and a little girl along with tags of weapon number 6 and number 7. Emil is shook, but he's a trooper, so he continues. The final document reveals the girl was named Halua and is weapon number 6. Emil was created as a failsafe weapon number 7 to stop weapon number 6. At the end of the path, we encounter a horrible monster pinned to the wall with stakes. This causes Emil to remember. He and this girl Halua were humans once until they were turned into weapons because of the experiments done to them. She became so powerful she could not be stopped. Well, at least until they created Emil. His stone glare was specifically designed to stop Halua. Emil reveals that Halua was his sister once. Now, he's returned to release her and give her peace, but just as importantly, to take her powers. Her powers could cancel a petrification curse. Before the gang starts, Emil says this.
So what's the plan here?
For to promise something. My sister somehow just to swallow me up. My original self becomes lost. I'm afraid I may try to. If that happens.
Oh, wait!
Then I want you to kill me.
It turns out, once Emil is absorbed, the only way to damage this beast is by attacking with magic. Melee attacks can hurt Emil as well. This fight is visually very interesting, as there are bullet hole sequences where weapon number 6 is launching all manner of magic attacks at you. In the end, though, it's more a matter of wearing her down with your own magic. With weapon number 6 defeated, Emil is briefly reunited with his sister. God damn, listen to this music.
Emil, wake up. Lua, It's I'll always be watching you. Hello.
I'm not crying. You're crying. Emil emerges from the rift with his sister's powers intact. However, something's gone wrong. Vice does not sugarcoat things.
God.
Meanwhile, NieR embraces his friend in spite of his appearance. This crushes Emil. What a cruel way to regain his sight. On the bright side,
Can you see my face?
You just like I would. You look like cool.
God damn, I love these characters. Emil decides that he'll cope with his new appearance and look at the positives. He has the powers to bring Kaine back. He could see without walking with a blindfold. That's a plus. Upon returning to Kaine, Emil reflects that he was constantly reminded of the past while interacting with Kaine. Perhaps his mind had mixed her up with Halua the whole time. Emil now has the power to reverse the petrification of Kaine, which is great, but there's no time to celebrate because now the shade's released from the bowels of the library. Thankfully, 5 years later, NieR is far more powerful and can finish this off once and for all. He Wayne Brady's the thing to sleep, and we move in to see Kaine awakening for the first time in 5 years.
You're the one calling me.
Kaine immediately recognizes Emil and is seemingly more shocked by NieR's more adult appearance than she is by Emil, looking like, you know, how he looks. He explains it's been 5 years, then he hands her a single lunar tear. He could not replace what she had received from her grandmother, but Kaine is grateful. The group's victory is short-lived as Popola and Devila ruin the party by explaining that Kaine and Emil are no longer welcome in the village. Although NieR is infuriated as they help save this village from a shade invasion, Emil and Kaine fall more on the understanding side of the offense. Emil looks like fucking Skeletor's illegitimate son, for crying out loud. He decides he'll camp outside the town with Kaine. NieR feels guilty as this is truly the first time that he's considered the fact that Kaine always sleeps outside. She's always slept outside, and this is the first time it's actually bothered him. Upon going to sleep, NieR sees Emil and Kaine sitting by the campfire. My recording of this got corrupted. Correction, I found the recording. It's super charming as Emil explains all the things he tried to do to restore Kaine while she was encased in stone, including pouring warm water over her. She mocks him for this, and he explains it didn't do much other than make her shiny. The conversation leads to Emil begging Kaine to talk about herself. This conversation carries on until she explains something that's very subtly hinted at in the original game, but is now made far more clear. Kaine was born intersex. She tells Emil that her body was different and the villagers treated her as a pariah, and the only one there for her was her grandmother. They move on to future goals of saving Kaine from shade possession and Emil getting her former body back. This interaction is charming as hell, and it chaps my ass that I lost the recording. Once again, I found it. This conversation is important character information for Kaine. Her attire is a desperate attempt to cling to her femininity. Her village compatriots may have seen her as a freak, but she'll make sure to secure her own identity. Never has a character had a more relevant reason for being overtly sexualized. I love her. Shaking it off, Popola tells us that the Shadowlord's lair is connected to the lost shrine. NieR laments that the bridge was destroyed when he picked up Vice there last time. Popola explains that the Red Bag Man has finally finished the canal, and he's now operating a ferry that can deliver us to the back entrance. When we reunite with the Red Bag Man, he says it isn't all puppies and unicorns, as the old ball and chain is always harping on him now and then about how much he works. This is hilarious, since before it seemed like they were always fighting because he was unemployed. Now that he's employed, it's another reason for them to fight. Henceforth, taking the ferry will often be the most convenient way to get around, and Toy Logic has seemingly gone buck wild, creating tons of specific dialogue with the Red Bag Man, constantly regaling us with his latest misadventure with his wife. Half of the time it'll be him building her up as a huge sweetheart, and the other half it'll be some argument they had. I loved all these interactions, and I genuinely was charmed by our ferryman. This is all new content, and I appreciated it. Onto the shrine, though. We climb into the back and carve the same path through the shrine as last time, except with newly armored foes. On the way up, this conversation happens.
Kaine? Emil? Look, from now on, I'm going to sleep with Emil.
Why?
I can't that you aren't allowed in the village. It's stupid.
So you're staging a fun.
Don't waste your time.
But it just feels wrong.
Well, that's really nice of you, but you don't have to have out here with us.
Emil.
You got her and pushing mission. Can't sleep around and what if you hold? Besides, I can't like camping with Kaine. So sit around the fire and tell stories or roast.
Emil, that's enough. I got a fucking image.
This crew is so goddamn charming. Moving on. Deeper into the shrine we go. We find our way to the location where Vice is discovered many hours ago now. One of our two guardians has survived to fight us off, and he's accompanied by many shades. At this point, I did every single quest in the first half of the game. On this file, I'm a god, and I am not even paying attention to what kind of heat these guys are bringing. The Guardian is easily toppled, or so I think. Kaine rushes up and gets his best efforts. She goes full Dante and then collapses on the ground. I then punish the Guardian easily enough. The group fears for Kaine's life, but they should be fearing for their own. Here comes the shade that's been held dormant for so long. Time to fight Shade Kaine, I guess. She's possessed. After we fight her, she awakens and takes control from the Shade. She thinks perhaps she can't stick with this group anymore. Emil interjects.
I couldn't hold back. I can't.
We're always going to be together. If you transform again, we'll just stop it. As many times it takes. I don't care how it is. We're gonna get you back. I'm sleeping inside because I'm with you. I'm able to ignore my appearance and keep going because of you. I'm weak and I'm sad, and I'm lonely. But you wrong, my friend, and I need you. So don't you dare leave me.
All right. Stop crying. Thanks. I'm all right.
Emil is such a sweetheart. Did I mention I love him? At the foot of the pedestal where Yona was previously held captive, I find a mysterious stone fragment. They can't decipher the meaning, so they bring it back to Popola. She can only figure that it's a cipher of some kind, and it's a key to entering the Shadowlord's castle. What it really means is instead of searching for sealed verses, in this act you'll be searching for keys to enter the Shadowlord's castle. At this point, the world is kind of open-ended. You as the player end up returning to all the locations you cleared in the first half of the game. The original game was operating on a shoestring budget, and this allowed them to minimize the scope of the world they had to create. As such, the smaller world is very easy to travel from end to end in. I was never bothered that the world wasn't big enough. I was never bothered that the visuals were very low poly. Even in this remake / remaster, or whatever the hell it is, it sticks very close to the original art style. The new game can run at higher resolutions, and there isn't the same grainy filter that made the picture quality bad in the old game. As such, it looks much cleaner and less harsh on my eyeballs. It is not, however, a next-gen feeling game. For me, I feel the art style carries this game for me. It has an ethereal way about it. The charming old village surrounded by plains, the old temple, the junkyard filled with lost in space robots, the Aerie, a town built precariously over a gorge, Seafront, a charming oasis that almost seems out of place in this world, and of course Facade, the tiered desert city with a population of mass people living above sand pits. This is not, nor has it ever been, the most technically impressive game, but to me its charm remains. That's not even speaking about our cast of misfits. I love all of their designs. I'll leave this subject lingering on that thought, as in the end, beauty is subjective. Next, though, I chose to revisit the junk heap. While we were gone the last 5 years, something awful happened.
Man, there's gotta be tons of machines over here.
But I don't think we can actually use.
Wow, what? Check this, it's brand new.
Hey, be careful, alright? This place is dangerous.
I'll be fine.
Oh no!
Huh?
Go!
Huh? Jacob! God. This is happening! Jacob!
Gideon, the younger brother, is now in charge of the shop. He now has an unhealthy obsession with destroying robots.
All I want is to destroy robots.
Just rip them up.
Okay.
Dude has lost it. He offers us a new two-handed sword, but as of now, it's gonna need a lot more work. So if NieR's gonna use it, he's gonna need to fix it up, and that means killing more robots and gathering more materials. Not to be anticlimactic or anything, but you do it. When you return to Gideon, he assures you that he'll fix up your weapon good, but it's gonna take some time. So in the interim, you have to leave and do other things until he notifies you and tells you the work is complete. Next, I decided to return to the Forest of Myth. When I asked if anything's going on in the village, the mayor says something strange has been going on with the divine tree in the village. It's divine, and it's a tree, and people don't mess with it due to superstition. So we're gonna go mess with it. Also, for the record, don't talk to the townspeople. They will lock you up in conversation. Once you speak to the tree, it speaks back. Again, we have more walls of text. I will try to be brief because they sure as hell didn't. I love this in the game. Now that I've taken it upon myself the task of recapping this, I kind of hate myself. So this tree began by explaining that its task was to remember the details of the world. It was a world historian, retaining the collective memories of the world. Those memories have splashed out, and the tree is losing them. The tree will tell you 3 of its memories, and it will be your task as the player to remember key moments of these walls of text. The first story is about a young child who's been stricken with a disease so foul that even his parents no longer visit. The only thing that keeps him going is visits from a young girl. He simultaneously resents these visits, as he also knows one day she'll no longer come. He detests his physical state. He wishes he could tell the girl how he feels. He never does. The girl eventually stops coming. The boy dies alone. This story is etched with the word envy. The tree shares another memory. There's a female warrior who has an enemy who is a beast with red eyes that she cannot comprehend. When she strikes it with her sword, it turns into a pillar of salt and dies, but when the smoke clears, more take its place. However, this battle brings her happiness, and it also gives her purpose. She vaguely remembers a daughter. She's unsure whether it's a true memory or just a dream. Her many friends fade away and die. Finally, she comes up against a beast that blots out the sky. She's laughing. She's still laughing as the city her daughter resides in collapses to the ground. Her story is etched with the word loss. You're teased with a story that was forgotten about a red dragon that falls from the heavens. I've never played Drakengard, but I'm well enough aware that this is one of the endings that happened in that game, and I wish I got more of that context. After many centuries of watching over these labeled memories, the tree laments that they are now fading away forever. Something's changed. The mountain of memories has disappeared. The tree has lost its purpose. This is when NieR and Vice walk into the room. These memories were not disappearing for no reason. A shade was consuming them. Each jewel it imbibed was another memory lost from the world forever. I don't know if you've heard, but my boy NieR, he's none too fond of shades. NieR slashes the shade open, revealing a trove of jewels bursting all over the floor. The tree pulls itself together and musters the ability to speak. It uses its opportunity to quiz you on the memories. In the story of Envy, the game will randomly generate the color eyes of the girl who visits a sick child. This will be the color of the lost Envy. Vice shouts at NieR. The tree is a shade, and NieR slashes at the arm of the shade. The damage to the tree does not bother it, as this interaction is the most it's had in centuries. It also says this was a promise made long ago. This is how it would be released. Although its stomach now throbs in pain as it asks the next question, how many were lost by the warrior who fought the red-eyed beasts? The game will give you a random number of friends, and you'll have to recall that number. In my case, how many people did the warrior lose in battle? Her daughter and 33 friends. At this point, the key needed to access the Shadowlord falls out of the shade, and NieR collects it before dispatching it. The final question, the most important thing in the world. Clearly, the answer is Yona. NieR has less than subtle views of the shade encounter.
What in the... I never realized shades were capable of rational thought.
I don't care if they can tap dance and play the fiddle. I just want to kill him without all this hassle.
With the trick that defeat, we no longer have to about being Barret's world of letters. Of course, time itself begins blind.
Again, though, don't talk to the villagers. With this new key in hand, you move along to your next destination. In my case, I went to do some more side quests. Now is a good time as ever to discuss more side quests I liked in the second half of the game. First thing anyone should do once they reach the second half of the game is go back to Seafront and finish the last 3 of the Fisherman's Gambit quests to upgrade your fishing skill to max level. You'll need substantial sums of money to upgrade your weapons to max level if you choose to do so, and one of these legendary fish can make you 15 grand. Rhinos are... It's not important what they're called. Either way, I caught them. Alright? I caught lots of them. Alright? It's essentially the best money-making scheme in the game. Also, it's a fishing game, so don't be a square. It's fun. There's a quest called Child's Last Chance where a kid is dying, and the kids in town believe it's because he was cursed by visiting the Forest of Myth. When you check it out, it turns out that you find berries that are clearly poisonous on the ground. Kaine pops one in her mouth and seems to enjoy it. When NieR follows, he ends up on the floor. Returning to the child's mother with an antidote closes this quest, but the silly flavor for it made it kind of fun. There's a quest called Research Project from underneath Emil's mansion. If you defeat the enemies, you end up at a list of names and addresses underneath the lab. If you follow the names, you eventually track down a woman in Seafront. She's long since passed once you arrive, but her grandson still lives there and has some of her possessions, and included in those possessions was a letter addressed to Emil and his sister. It turns out she was a researcher that worked at the place where Emil and her sister were interned, and she feels responsible for making Emil what he is. She tried to be a mother figure, but failed when it mattered most. Upon hearing this, Emil recalls her hundreds of years ago. She looked after them when the other researchers treated Emil and Halua like rats. Although Emil is sad to have not fixed his body, he's glad to remember this mother figure. It's again more solid flavor to the characters and world, and for us as the player. Also, I'm a big fan of quests that treat you with like quality bits of story as a reward, and this is one of them. You have no other ulterior motives, like you don't get any items or money for this quest. It's purely for the enjoyment of the story. There's a quest for the ferryman where he wants to pick up a gift for his wife and he can't decide what, and he calls upon Vice and NieR for the assist. In the end, you require a red jewel from the Strange Things store in Facade. Upon delivery, the wife proves to be a very friendly and loving face, and Vice and NieR are invited in for dinner. After a lovely feast... Oh yeah, by the way, she said, I just want something that you promised me years ago, and he could not remember what he promised her. And it turns out after all that, all she wanted was for him to cook her dinner. So anyways, you rejoin them for the dinner, for said dinner. After a lovely feast, everyone could not be happier. Of course, right before the guys disperse, a fight breaks out. You hate to see it. It should be noted that during the latter parts of the game, people start referring to NieR as the guy who does everyone's busy work. They don't even ask nicely anymore, as they know he'll do their dumb tasks. Thematically, the game has a built-in excuse for making NieR an errand boy. People kept asking NieR to do dumb, small, and unimportant tasks, and he just kept obliging. The Despicable Man is a quest that requires a real runaround. You essentially follow the trail of a man who's broken the hearts of countless women all over the world. When a girl from NieR's village asks for her bow to be tracked down, NieR has no idea he'll find evidence of this man all over the place.
That man simply hops from one woman to the next, does he not?
He's been cheating this whole time? That's just terrible.
Doubtless he will end up suffering at the hands of one of his paramours sooner or later.
I don't think he means any harm. This kind of thing just happens with attractive guys.
That's awful! What if a man did that to you, Kaine?
He'd wake up a little less man than he used to be.
Change my mind. Cheating is always wrong.
Eventually, your evidence will lead you to the junk heap and to the young Gideon. After putting 1 and 2 together, or 2 and 2, how's the saying go? Anyways, the man you've been chasing down was the dead man that with Jacob and Gideon's mom 5 years ago. What do you think? Was the man finally going to settle down and live happily ever after with Jacob and Gideon's mom? Or did he just find his newest hustle? Did the boy's mother die in the interest of a man who never really loved her? You be the judge. God damn, this game is ice cold. Lastly, one of my favorite quests was regarding a gem called the Mermaid tier. A young woman approaches you to find a famous jewel called the Mermaid's tier. She's a jeweler and she believes that it's indeed in seafront. Her uncle allegedly was the last owner. NieR investigates the lighthouse and finds a letter that is roughly 50 years old. It turns out her lover was supposed to send the jewel. After investigating the back of the post office, you find the jewel enclosed in an envelope. The reason why the lighthouse lady never got the jewel was because her lover also enclosed a message of sadness. His dreams of traveling to her were all about over as his body was being ravaged by a disease. The postman decided to start writing fake letters at this time, and as such, hid the jewel as well. NieR can now decide to bury the jewel in memory of the lighthouse lady, give it to the client, or sell it. Obviously, NieR is a good boy, so he wouldn't sell it. I chose to give it to the client, as it turns out the lighthouse lady's lover was actually the client's uncle, or grandfather. So it was a family heirloom, and it's returned to its rightful owner. I don't think the lighthouse lady would want the Mermaid's tier just buried anyway. There are lots of quests of worth. This video will be massive. Ridiculous even. But it was worth going over some of these quests even briefly. I'll be a person who later will complain about some elements of this game, but I've seen lots of people complain about the quality of the side content. Much of the time, they're probably right, but not always. I'm of the belief that most side quests are formulaic and not great in all games, until you give them the right context to appreciate them. Many of this game's quests belong in some dog shit MMO. Pick up X items for no contextual reason, and a small reward not worth your energy. There's some quests, including a treasure map quest, that lead to extra weapons or cool items. But the ones that I remember are the ones with a great story. I'll remember the bickering red bag couple. I remember the poor dog dying with the medicine in its mouth. The trials and tribulations of the lighthouse lady have lived in my heart since 2017 when I first played the first game. I don't remember the random side quests from other games in 2017 that led to Cool Gun Mark V. Just food for thought. From here, we return back to the junk heap to get our weapon. Gideon has had a request for us. So our weapon is done now, so there's just this other matter to contend with. Gideon has lost his goddamn mind. He wants you to avenge his brother. NieR is none too excited until he gets the detail that a shade has joined forces with a robot. NieR goes from, bro, you gotta chill with this freaking murder shit, to a split second later, oh shit, there's a shade? Murder, death, kill. Adult NieR is a darker timeline NieR. You fight your way through waves of robots, again, and you come across a security robot with a shade on its head. This one seems to be fighting for more than the other P-33 units. During this fight in particular, Kaine seems to be dealing with some kind of distress. She's muttering something to herself during the fight. Eventually, the giant robot and his shade companion are taken to the woodshed and beaten soundly. This robot is really trying to protect the shade and echoing sentiments about seeing the world. Weird. After the death blow, Gideon comes out of the woodwork. He won't stop hitting the destroyed robot.
Hey, Mom. It's enough.
I did it! Now that the god thing is dead, I can bridge wherever I want. Just wait, you god freak! Now make all kinds of powerful weapon. Just leave it to me. Leave all to me.
We get it. Really?
One might hope this would shine a light on NieR's own sentiments towards shades, but he doesn't seem to reflect too hard on it as he leaves. Whatever, we got another key in our pocket. Popola gets a letter from the chief in the Aerie. Turns out they're going to open the town up to trade and allow in outsiders. She shows the letter to the group and everyone's at a loss. This does not sound like the Aerie, so it's time to investigate. Upon arrival, the residents are definitely no more friendly than usual. In fact, the situation sounds downright dire. There is, however, a small circle of vendors that have formed. You may buy items from them, but once you interact with a nearby guard, this happens.
A letter, huh? Yeah, heard something about that.
So no, you know about the...
Maybe I don't. I'm not sure. Which is it, man? I ask. Are you friends of Kaine?
Say that?
Heard the rumors. Here to hunt shades, are you? Indeed. The aim is to defeat every last one. Every last one. Beware, this is shade.
Damn it! It's a trap!
This shakes the leaves out of the tree and the shades come out. For a town that had a distaste from outsiders from the onset, the village is beset by shades. The thing is, not everyone wants NieR to continue mercilessly slaying the shades. Kaine slays a woman who she claims to be a shade, but the brother doesn't care. He claims they're the monsters here. Kaine was right. She was a shade, and that shade gets its retribution fast. Like, record-setting fast. After going on a murder spree, Emil and NieR eventually run into the boss. The shades are one thing, but now it's time for the teardrop of total devastation. Actually, it remains unnamed by my reckoning, but that sounds right. Seems right, right? Teardrop of total devastation. Like, that shit's coming off the top ropes. Anyways. Emil helps, and this fight takes multiple stages. This is one of the longer and more involved battles. The shade is so strong that Emil is forced to use all of his power to combine with NieR to defeat it. Sadly, Emil, our weapon number 7, loses his control. In a flash, the entirety of the Aerie is destroyed. Moments ago, Emil was attempting to be the voice of reason as NieR and Vice were mercilessly slaying all the shades. Now he's killed not only all the shades, but all the innocent villagers. The music, again, is fucking perfection.
What have I done? I killed innocent people. I killed all them all.
Believed us. If it wasn't for you, it all be out. We owe you.
But I...
All right. Back.
Honestly, the first time this scene happened, I felt like that Emil was the only one in the party taking this situation with the level of seriousness that's required. Emil couldn't control his powers and destroyed an entire village. And the guys are like, oh, well, I mean, you saved us. That's all that matters. Before the crew can go visit Facade, Popola advises us that the ferryman with the red bag has neglected his duty. Time to go find him. The first instinct is most likely that he got into another fight with his wife. The locals suggest that it might be the case, and it would appear to be the leading idea. I mean, his wife did say they got in a fight. Vice and NieR discuss that if they do find him, they should have another meal with him and his wife. The meal they ate together seemed to make an impression. It was pretty legendary. Everyone in Seafront is all abuzz about a ship that washed up along the shoreline. With no pending ideas about the red bag man, it's worth a look-see. Kaine has had a bad feeling about this, and her and Emil meet NieR by the beachside. He's taken aback as they never come into town. The crew goes inside the ship, and again the tone changes in the game. It's now a horror/ghost story. Also again, NieR implies the girl that he just saw was a ghost, and again Vice weirds out. It's funny to see this book become so superstitious. The boys find several apples which have been linked to the Red Bad Man in several encounters in the past. After finding records on the ship, it turns out the ship was a slaving vessel. There are implements of torture on board, and NieR can't contemplate mistreating people like that. Eventually, NieR crashes through the floor, and he finds this scene in the ship's hold.
Look at the boat. They are the people from town. And I fear, missing ferryman.
Oh no, oh, this can't be. Why did everyone, God damn it.
Pull yourself to the lad. Remember the presence Kaine sensed. The culprit who murdered these folk awaits us further within.
I won't let them get away with this.
The group reunites, and it's time to find out who slaughtered the townspeople. The group find the girl who is the alleged ghost from earlier. Before they can begin to dispatch her, the mailman walks in. He's been taking care of her. That poor dummy. Once outside of the ship, it's time for the most elaborate battle of the game, by my reckoning. This fight has a variety of camera angles and requires an absolute ton of damage to be dealt. The little girl is definitely the largest shade in the game. It turns out the creature's biggest weakness is the compassion it seemed to have for the postman. This creature deals a massive attack that weakens everyone. The fight is almost over for our four companions. The fight is almost over for our companions when the postman uses his ultimate weapon, a 2x4. In this lull in the battle, NieR summons the last of his power to attack the vulnerable girl. I haven't made a point to say it yet, but the shades don't like direct sunlight. The strongest can heal as fast as they're weakened, but this shade can no longer fight the sun off, and she dissipates into the ocean skyline. The mailman apologizes for helping the shade and for being oblivious to the fact that she was actually killing the townsfolk. During the conversation, the woman with the red bag walks in. You have two options. Lie to her and tell her that he left town, or tell the truth. I told her the truth because that's what I believe in. She's heartbroken, of course. Vice has made many complaints about this whiny couple as time has gone on. He complained about his commentary on the ferry. Now he regrets that they've had their last meal as the argumentative couple. Upon returning to the village, there's a letter in NieR's mailbox with an invitation to a royal wedding. Time to go back to Facade. The crew goes straight to the king's mansion to meet with the king. Vice asks him to know the identity of the lucky bride, and who emerges from the back but Fira. This is the first time the king has met Emil, but he's not startled at all by his appearance. He's the most accepting of anyone in this game so far, in fact. He also notes Kaine's absence, as she clearly stayed by the front gate as she always does. The king insists that they all stay at his mansion as royal guests on the evening. Again, this is noteworthy because no one treats Emil and Kaine with this kind of hospitality. And definitely not while being this sincere. The night before the wedding, Kaine is skittish. She doesn't think she belongs with such a festive occasion. NieR reminds her that she's here on the king's command, and the rest of the city is not like other villages. They live by rules. If there isn't a specific rule against Kaine, they don't give a crap. This seems to reassure her. Vice is still an asshole, though.
Will you at least procure a new set of lingerie for the festivities? Some spring colors, perhaps?
Emil is hyped about the wedding. He lets this slip.
I'm sorry to jar myself. I wish I were up here.
You'll find your nice bride some.
Huh? Oh, right. Bride.
You must tired indeed if you stood that simple social necessity.
Yeah, that's not it.
In the original game, it hinted that Emil might be gay, but it was very subtle. In this new version, it basically settles it. I appreciate, though, the way these characters are handled. With Kaine, she was born intersex, and so she flaunts her femininity. That's only a component to her character. Emil is gay, and you find that out based on a subtle conversation. And it's, again, only a small component to his character. He gives him depth, and it's not used cheaply. That's all I really want to say about that. Moving on, NieR converses with the king on the roof about his concerns for the future of the city. The next morning is the day of the wedding. This glorious day is interrupted by Facade's biggest enemy. The party chases off the pack leader and his remaining friends. Left on the floor on her wedding day is the new Queen Fira. She speaks for the first time.
I would rethink this course of action, King. A head latter kill you canon.
If that shit doesn't get to you, then you don't have a goddamn heart. The king is beside himself, and he wants to make a final attack on the wolves. The group agrees to come along. Before leaving the city, the king's advisor stops him from leaving, with a message from the men of the mask.
老体関ら関係かけてしたすわれあるあきエルギギス的あるうかせひがせくゆくゆ押してきたちギリあがい海ザムよりおきじでくじ海地じわちたしこうだしより
He went from home to home all night getting permission for the war against the wolves. There are rules, after all. Time to get some vengeance against the Wolf King. The king is bloodthirsty. NieR shares this quality as the pack leader is a shade, and it brings out NieR's killer side. King gets his satisfaction as he delivers the final blow to the wolf shade. However, hollow satisfaction that may be. The group leaves the desert as the king mourns at Fira's grave. Well, that was the final key to the Shadowlord's abode. Time to head back to the Lost Shrine. This is going to seem like a strange thing to say, but with all those events behind us, you ain't seen nothing yet. NieR and Vice reminisce that this altar was where they first met, and they use the key to open the path to the Shadowlord. The space opens to a giant, beautiful courtyard with architecture that's totally foreign to everything else we've seen in this game. The bird in this fountain asks several questions, and Vice has to answer correctly to get access to the castle. Vice feels as though he's heard this before. Why did humans disappear from this world? Because of a black disease. How can humans extend their lives? By separating body from soul. What is the destination of souls? They are placed in their corresponding shells. Vice is acknowledged as a master, and the way forward is unlocked. If you're blindsided by those questions and answers, then you're not alone. Once you proceed through the next door, who do you see but Devla and Popola? They try and convince you to leave, but you won't, so that means a fight. Why are they fighting? They don't say specifically. Not yet. The two of them claim they didn't want to fight you, but they do it anyways. After enough damage is dealt, they retreat. Some damage is dealt to our party, though, as Vice is now malfunctioning. Devla and Popola claim the powers of the sealed verses were lent to them, and they seem to have the power to take them away. You proceed forward, small malfunction or not. The next room is a ballroom, and it's filled with dancing ghosts. As the music changes, the silhouettes become shades, and you're forced to clear them out. They keep coming, and Kaine takes it upon herself to open the door to the next room. Wrong move. Tons of more shades pour in. Next challenge is a giant shade boar. Kaine is yelling at it for some reason. This shade is sturdier than others, and it's covered in armor, and it has some kind of powers of rejuvenation. This boar will have to be taken down numerous times. Once it's down, the group makes a getaway, but it gets back up and chases you immediately. Your party is extremely exhausted when the King of Facade and the Men of the Mask show up. They have a debt to pay back, and they plan to repay it. They hold the boar back in order for Kaine and NieR to escape. They know the sacrifice they're making.
Hey! Stop! Go! Stop it! Go! No! Open! You can't fight on your own!
枯れると改ざんあせだ
あらたてあぬうわとち
NieR does not take the sacrifice well, and Kaine makes sure that he keeps it together. Devila and Popola again wait for another fight. Finally, they explain the truth. 1300 years ago, when humanity was on the brink of destruction, humanity created a plan called Project Gestalt. It is at this moment when Vice begins to remember. Devila and Popola are not human.
I remember, Devila, Popola, are not human. In fact, oh no.
Yeah, sometimes the truth can be a real bitch. You want that thought for him, sister? All of us. Every person standing in this room are mere shells created by the true humans.
So now we know that shades are the souls of former humans, and all of the human characters in the game are actually the replicants designed to be holders for the original shade. Devila and Popola are here to get NieR's shell from him for the shade that wants to merge for it. For the shade that wants to merge with it. Well, for NieR, that's fighting words. This battle is bitter for NieR and the player. No one wants to hurt these two women, as they've been terribly important to our story the whole way. I personally grew attached to them, and so I can sympathize with NieR struggling to fight them. He does as he needs to, though, and Devila falls in the middle of the fight. Popola cannot handle her twin sister falling in battle. Devila explains that they were made as twins because they were born without souls, and the world is just too empty to go on living without a soul. Their companionship was their drive to persist. NieR wants to stop this. Popola has a reply for this.
Up! You put my downstairs like a goddamn animal and want us. Popola, wait! It doesn't have to. No, stop! It's way to sleep. Stop! No one stops!
She goes ballistic, and her magic is just going wild. Once enough damage is done, Emil merges with the idea to save his friends from the frenzied Popola. Emil has long felt bitter because his eyes turn people to stone, or because he looks the way he does. Now in this crossroads, he's grateful for the lot of it, because that's what led him to become friends with this motley crew. After all this time of being a weapon, a tool of destruction, now he'll be able to use his powers for good. To save. He sacrifices himself to absorb Popola's blast and to protect his only remaining friends. Watching it back to write all this still stings.
Oh dear. Kaine's so stable, and Vice can't arguing with people. I hope they can hold it together once they're gone. Well, I guess they'll just have to learn. I want to see you again. I want to see you again. Just one time. I'm scared. I don't want to die.
We get a glimpse of the Shadowlord and Yona in bed. We'll be seeing you soon. Back to NieR. Before the Prince of Facade sacrificed himself, NieR was devastated. Now, with Emil gone, he is broken. Kaine has to ante up as well to remind him that he has to make this sacrifice worth it. As a player, you get documents from Project Gestalt right after the fight with Devla and Popola. The world was inflicted with a disease called the White Chlorination Syndrome, and Popola and Devla were the surveillance androids put in charge of transferring the bodily information into the replicants. Eventually, at some point, the Gestalts, or as we now call them, the Shades, started attacking the replicants. There was some kind of malfunction that caused the two sides to repel one another. Vice and Noir were mechanisms for restoring the humans with their shell form. It turns out the reasons for their failures was because the replicants were gaining their own sentience. A robot with its own will does not want to share a shell with the soul of a human. Also in these notes is that NieR is the original Gestalt, or more specifically, this NieR that we've been playing is the original replicant. The Shadowlord is the original Gestalt. That isn't going to slow us down from kicking his ass, though, am I right? Taking his sister back. That sweet, sweet Emil is not dying for nothing. This culminates in a fight with the Shadowlord, and also a fight with Grimoire Noir. Yona interrupts this fight midway.
Wait. Breath.
That has got to hurt. This version of Yona explains to the Shadowlord that she can sense the replicant Yona inside her fighting to be with her brother. She sees the same sadness that she feels is what the other girl is feeling inside. At this point, she exposes herself to the light and separates from her shell, leaving NieR's sister alone to be with her brother. There's this thing about that, though. The Shadowlord was kind of attached to his sister as well. The final battle begins. After doing a good portion of damage against him, Vice's powers will finally weaken. Vice promises to help finish off the Shadowlord, but after that, it's up to NieR. After roughly 20 hours or so of posturing, Vice finally lets down his hard shell and admits his appreciation of NieR's friendship. He even admits to liking the abbreviated Vice.
Vice! Remember what I do about using my nipple? Well, forget it. I rather fond of this.
He's constantly, the entire game, told you about how he's Grimoire Vice, not just Vice. He hated it. Well, now he's finally admitted the truth. He doesn't care what you call him as long as you call. You know what I'm talking about, player? That's the thing about Vice. I love him. With Vice gone, it's a mano duel between NieR and the Shadowlord. NieR finishes the job off and destroys the Shadowlord once and for all. Vice has lost his physical form, but calls to NieR from the ether. He reassures NieR that Yona's okay, but she needs to be called back by fond memories to remind her of her reason to live.
The person I love more than else is my brother. Is that you?
and you're so alone.
You look better than before. Grown up.
I guess you have seen a while.
Have I been asleep this whole time?
Something sad.
It's almost like I'm a princess from some fairy tale.
No. Happy to have you back.
Me too.
I know.
You and her. Yeah, good life, okay?
We're gonna go.
So I guess
Could stay with us, you know.
thanks, Pat, I'll pass. You know how it is. I got my own take to bear care of.
What do you mean?
Personal shit, right? Anyway, take it easy.
Hey, look. It's beautiful. For the longest, it hurts telling me how you wanted to see the light. And now they can see it.
We flash back to NieR and Yona 5 years ago. Man, 5 years can change some things. Now the Shadowlord and his sister are together again after all. Did this ending kind of feel a little bit unsatisfactory? Do you crave more? Well, there's like 4 more of them. People coming from NieR Automata like me were ready for this. That was ending A. Buckle up. Much more to come. The next route will start the moment Emil was breaking Kaine free from the stone, back in the library. Route B will play out much the same as your last playthrough of the game, but there will be additional cutscenes and a lot of text backstory regarding Kaine. As I go over the next run, assume that all of the events transpire the same. However, I'll add additional context added by the new run. Time to understand Kaine a lot better. A lot better. Discrimination. The story starts as a young girl braves a storm and wanders alone into the Aerie. Suddenly a rock comes crashing down upon her head. Not just one, but a hail of stones come falling down around her. They found her. Kaine describes Demo, the worst of the bullies from the Aerie, taunting her as she mustered the strength to stand and shrugged off the blood pouring down her face from a cut above her eye. Demo and the bullies call Kaine a freak and circle her. The parents of the children of the Aerie were well aware of this behavior, and some of them even encouraged it. The society of the Aerie was ruled by hatred and fear, and she was something to be hated. Demo approaches her and begins to taunt her. Show me. She refuses. This initiates a flurry of kicks and punches from the gang. I don't get you, freak. What you acting like a girl for, huh? Everyone knows what you really are. Just as Kaine accepts the next assault, the jeers of the children turn to cries. An ancient woman stood in front of them as Demo cried on the floor. Hurts like a bitch, don't it? Now I suggest you scatter before I throw another one. And any of you other little bastards ever touch my Kaine again, I'll do far worse than throw a rock. This assault scares off the crew, and the old woman kneels down to assist young Kaine. Kaine will hear none of it. Everyone hates me. They think I cause bad things to happen. They think I'm a freak. I wish I was dead. Her grandmother instructs her that she has a duty to go on to fight to the last breath. When Kaine's parents died, her grandmother stepped in and quickly accepted Kaine as her own. Kaine has a deep affection for this woman, who is the only person in the world to accept her. Kaine resents her abnormal body. Her grandmother reassures her that she's beautiful and gives her a wreath of dried flowers for her hair. They are lunar tears. Finding one is a spectacular find, so a whole wreath of flawless flowers is incredible. The grandmother waves off this achievement and pretends as though it was no feat. Her grandmother also assures Kaine of her own beauty, and that she's befitting of such a gift. Kaine feels at home because this one woman who provides such unconditional love. Daily life. The story describes of the home life of Kaine living with her grandmother. The beginning of the story is her grandmother cursing as she chops wood. Kaine understands that her grandmother isn't getting any younger and offers her aid. Her grandmother allows her to take over chopping wood while she goes off to retrieve water. The task for the water is actually the more challenging task, but Kaine knows her grandmother is saving her from having to travel near villagers. As Kaine struggles to cut the wood, she learns the enjoyment of a good curse word. Her grandmother arrives home, collapsing from the weight of the water buckets. This is Kaine realizing that her grandmother is getting sick, and it's time for her to shoulder more of the burden. She fights off her grandmother and takes off to town to buy medicine for her only loved one. Kaine is filled with panic as she walks towards the town. The villagers that do notice her slink away. She navigates all the way to the apothecary, even having the nerve to ask directions from someone. Once she arrives at the apothecary, she sees a familiar face, Demo. He's not so bold and isolated and out of his element. He's easily scared away and retreats. Kaine notices a portrait drawn of a little girl that has long since faded, and the apothecary notes that it was the sketch of his daughter, long since passed. He speaks to Kaine like a person and acknowledges the rumors about her, but he shows regret about the way her grandmother, Callie, was driven out of the village. This is actually the first time Kaine has ever heard her grandmother's name, and learning it is a true revelation to her. The apothecary hands Kaine a few crayons and tells her that Callie was an old friend of his, and he owes her much. He then encourages her to draw her own sketch, as he's certain it would make her happy. Kaine agrees, but she's also very perplexed to have anyone treat her with anything other than contempt. When Kaine returned home, she found her grandmother asleep in bed, but her feet were blackened and raw from pacing around the room. Kaine places the medicine at the bedside, but her grandmother wakes up as she's about to leave. She wants full assurances that Kaine is all right. Kaine shows the crayons from her pocket and explains their origins. She also informs her grandma that she'll draw her a portrait. Grandma fights it, but Kaine won't relent, so the artist begins her work. Upon completion, Kaine drops her art to the floor. She'd assumed that the crayons would give her the skill required for the task. The portrait could be a face. It could have also been a boulder or a lump of clay. In spite of Kaine's disappointment, to her surprise, her grandma gave the picture a place of honor in the house. Kaine catches her glimpsing at it from time to time. She interprets this as a mocking gesture, although her grandmother assures her that it's sincerity. She says it gives her joy and a will to go on. Separation. This story takes place 5 years later. Grandma is considerably older now. Kaine is older too, and is now giving her grandma a lot more sass. Her grandmother can no longer complete many of the household duties. Kaine has taken them over. One morning, Kaine grabs a wheelbarrow. She's leaving to gather stones to build a protective wall for their little hovel. The grandma scoffs at this idea as they have nothing to steal, so she invites thieves to come and take whatever they want. Kaine is not worried about thieves though. It's shades that are of her concern. Still a charmer, her grandma reminds her how beautiful she's become, and Kaine dutifully fights off her charms. Her grandmother is not only losing her body, but clearly her mind is going in and out, and it breaks Kaine's heart. In spite of this worry, she leaves for the day. Her concern for her grandmother distracts her from the task at hand, and she seemingly accomplishes nothing. As she crests the final hill to a view of her house, she sees a plume of black smoke emanating from her home. She charges towards the house, and also engulfed in smoke was an enormous shade. She challenges this enormous shade. She could see within the structure her grandmother struggling against the flames. Seeing her alive brings Kaine the energy to run towards the house, but after a couple of steps, a roar from the shade takes her off her feet and tumbling through the air. She forces herself to make a move towards her grandma, only to see the shade with her grandmother pinned down to the earth with the tip of a claw. One or both of Kaine's ankles are surely broken. The process of moving was slow and agonizing. Kaine finally musters enough strength to go and attack with the small knife she has, but it's like attacking a rock. Her grandmother begs Kaine run, as she has to live. Eventually the shade tires of playing with the two, and it swiftly extinguishes the remaining life from the old woman. This leaves almost nothing left of her. Kaine stands on and takes a losing fight. All she knows is hatred, and she attempts to kill it, but that thought is not well founded. She's left at the brink of death. I attempted to summarize these stories as briefly as possible while still maintaining their core message. You have no idea how much I would simply like to read the stories verbatim, but as it is, this video will be far too long and far too much effort considering its likely small audience. After these stories end, you'll continue a fight that you've already had against the beast from underneath the library. After the fight with the library monster, we return to Kaine's dream. It was after her fight with the shade. She failed to kill it. Her left eye was gone, and she had a ragged stump of an arm resting a few feet from her. As she lay on the floor dying, she's tormented by Demo and thoughts of the apothecary. He hands her an image that reveals to her the true condition of her grandmother as a bloody lump of nothing. She's crushed and is realizing that she doesn't have long for this world. This is when a new voice enters her mind. He torments her in a different way. He wants her body. Slowly, this voice is becoming her voice, and it's taking over. Kaine remembers her grandmother's wish for her to survive and fights off the intruder. Her body was being covered in what felt like slime, and the voice keeps telling her that he wants her body. She can't die yet. The new arm formed from the ooze now has a life of its own. The voice is pestering her, invoking her darkest feelings of revenge. She is possessed now. They make a deal to work together. The shade offers its power to Kaine, and the revenge she seeks can be hers with his power. Kaine's shade's name is Tyron. He tells her that he'll be living in her heart, and the more she kills, the more it'll become rotten and sour, and that's the way he likes it. He also assures her that if she ever goes soft and stops wanting to kill, he will take over. Now she feels truly like a freak. Now she's possessed by a shade. She apologizes to her grandmother. I know it's late in the game to talk about a very basic gameplay system, but I'm the one making the video, so I'll do it now. This game has an action-based combat system, but at its core, it's a JRPG. This is a distinction that was lost on many people that played the sequel based on seeing the developer of Platinum Games. There's a very simple leveling system based on experience, tried and true. You, of course, can level your weapons, and that will be your most exhaustive struggle for the most ardent completionists. Also, there's a word system. As you run around, you'll randomly accrue words. All of them can be individually assigned to weapons or magic spells. For me, I was very simple. On my weapons, I would always have the words that gave a bonus to attack power and a secondary word that buffed item drop rate. Again, for those weapon upgrade materials. You can, however, choose to buff armor break or magic regen rate. Now, because this game is structured to where you play the same sections over and over, it leads to the later playthroughs being of trivial difficulty. Now, as it was, I played on normal, and I did every quest for the purposes of this video, so I was incredibly strong even on my first run. But the last run of the game, I was melting through everything on my path. For me, I appreciated it, as I was the kind of kid who would grind to level 99 in Final Fantasy and play it where I was a god amongst ants. For RPG systems, I never play hard difficulty. To me, the appeal is the tangible feeling of getting more and more powerful. I like progression and my games with progression, basically. I don't really have a noteworthy take on this, like really in the end. It's just more to say I'm acknowledging it. And you're going to see footage of me ignoring attacks and just straight gunning for damage. I'll be melting the end bosses very quickly. I did not put this on easy difficulty. I just played so much that I power leveled over everything. And if you play it the way I did, you will too. If you want to comment about how hard mode changed your playthrough, please do. As Forrest Gump once said, That's all I have to say about that. It's time to re-experience the shrine. As you enter, you get a cutscene featuring Shrine's guardian, Gretel. It's lost without its friend Hansel. He shoos off a group of shades. Already you get a sense of an actual character behind this beast you so callously slayed without consideration. As you travel further up the shrine, you get another scene. Gretel failed to protect Weiss, and Hansel is dead. No need to continue life, but the shades are here to listen. Next up, Gretel is apologizing to the shades. They went Gestalt before they could fully join a shell and were judged for it. Now Gretel wishes them all to spend the rest of their lives together. As NieR arrives outside the door, Gretel and all the shades have made a covenant, and Gretel vows to protect them. The shades engulf NieR to protect their friend. The damage to the shades makes Gretel even more mad. Tyron scoffs at these shades and their friend. You can sense that Kaine feels some sympathy as she understands the shades. NieR finishes the job on Gretel, but not before it does a number on Kaine. Gretel talks to the very end, but NieR is none the wiser, and he dispatches the creature. This is when Tyron thinks it's time to shine. He takes over for Kaine and has to be fought back. It is Emil and NieR's calls that bring her back to take control, and thus we continue back on a similar flow to the prior playthrough. I next chose to visit the junkyard again. Last time we were at the junkyard, we saw Jacob dying in some scrap after seeing a robot. This time, the story starts earlier. A mother and son shade are hiding, and some voices appear to be chasing them. The mother decides to protect her child by drawing the hunter's attentions. She pleads for the child to remain safe and to remember her. This will be the last time this young shade sees its mother. Just as the shade is mourning its mother, a defense robot enters the room. Initially, it's going to destroy the intruder, but the fact that it has something leaking from its eyes gives it pause. The shade introduces itself as Khalil, and the robot does the same, and gives itself the name of P-33. Khalil explains the death of its mother, and the robot explains they have something in common, as his creator also died hundreds of years ago. 874 years ago, actually. Khalil explains that he will be killed if found. P-33 promises to defend Khalil. Now we flash back to the moment of Jacob's death. Yeah, you probably already figured it out. P-33 was there with Khalil, but Gideon caused his own brother's death and has used the robot as a scapegoat. Khalil and the Shade do not even seem to dislike the young boys. There's no anger or anything negative in their hearts. In the next scene, P-33 is being instructed in the outside world by the young Shade. P-33 only knew of the world inside this mountain of junk. This has opened his mind, or circuits. There's an air of wonder about P-33 now. At this point, the guys have collected materials for the weapon again. You see, even though you already have the weapon from Gideon from the last playthrough, you still have to go through the same motions in the junk heap. Weiss even acknowledges that you have to do the same things over again to appease the plot. So now it's the waiting game before you get your sword back. I chose to do the Forest of Myth, which happens to play out identically as the last time. The stories are the same, and there's no additional story tidbits thrown in. So after that, I head back to the junk heap. At this point, you don't want to fight this robot and its shade friend, but it's already happened. This has to happen. Now you hear Khalil talking to his friend Robot, which he's renamed Beepy. Khalil begs Beepy to stop fighting, as he does not want to be alone again, but the robot made a promise to defend Khalil. This is why Kaine was shouting things during the last fight. She can understand the entirety of this discussion. Meanwhile, Tyron just laughs maniacally with no sense of empathy. Khalil pleads for us to stop hurting his friend, but only Kaine can hear, and she's not stopping. The robot is dispatched, and the Shade is dropped at his feet. This battle actually will not end until the Shade is killed. No amount of damage can be done to the robot to kill it without dispatching the Shade. It is the motivation for the robot that must be killed. Goddamn heartbreaking. The The robot lies, distraught and upset that he didn't have the power to save them and let them live their long lives together. BP is now alone and understands the emotions that Khalil felt when they met with the loss of his mother. This shit makes me hate Gideon even more. This fictitious character literally makes my blood boil. Tyron notes that Gideon is a perfect example of humanity. After the group departs the junk heap, they discuss why they imagine a shade would hang out with a machine. They all speculate, and Kaine begins to chime in, but is interrupted by NieR. He doesn't care what the shade was thinking. What's important is that they kill every shade they come across.
Sure. The shade tried protector was goddamn absurd. Still, you guys should be careful.
What do you mean?
If the shade beside me ever takes over, I'm probably going to attack you.
It's gonna happen. Or no shade.
The light is correct. You are many things, hussy, but a shade is not one of them. Shades, for example, do not come equipped with its foul and scurrilous mouths.
How about I cram your face up your own asshole?
Just important, I keep plenty of Vice being an asshole in here. The scene is just another example, though, of NieR being oblivious to the fact that Kaine is living with a shade inside of her, and she's not a bad person. His hatred gets the best of him time and time again. Next, I visited the Aerie. This area is very similar to before, but now there are subtleties with clarifications, so you can get the whole picture of why the Shades think your group are a bunch of monsters. The Shades just wanted to live their lives in peace. They exclaim that our group are the ones who have lost their humanity, and we, in fact, deserve to die. After dispatching the giant shade, it's time for Emil's dream. Rampage. The story starts as weapon number 6 has lost control in the laboratory. The dream graphically depicts scientists falling at the hands of Halua in her terrifying form. After dispatching all of them, she's left alone to howl down the halls of the structure. Now Emil, blindfolded, is led down a hall by a man in a lab coat. Emil is not used to being blindfolded and pleads with the man walking him to do it slower because he can't see. Eventually he falls and splits his head open. This also knocks his bandana loose, and it causes droplets of blood to turn to stone midair. "Close your damn eyes," the scientist instructs. He also barks, "Never look at him." He puts his boot to Emil. This sense of power calms him, as he knows that Emil could trounce him at any moment. At the end of their walk, the scientist stops as he sees the viscera strewn about. Number 6 has made paste of all their employees, and he will go no further. He tells Emil to go the rest of the way alone and retreats. I mean, what does it matter? You're not even human. You're a monster. Slowly, Emil follows the sound of howling deeper into the lab. Emil thinks of this as an opportunity to free his sister. Emil recalls, "We studied together. We ate cookies together. We cried together. We laughed together." Her being around gave him strength. Eventually, he comes to the deepest part of the lab, the experimentation chamber. What he finds looks nothing like Halua. He sees a savage beast crawling on all fours amongst the remains of researchers. Emil focuses his gaze upon the creature, and as it starts to creak and crack and become stone, he apologizes for having to do so. Halua has become too powerful and must be dealt with. He repeats, "I'm sorry," until the deed is done. Once her petrification is complete, her memories flood Emil's mind. They are both damaged. Now it is Emil floating above the Aerie, considering his impact. His sister had turned into a monster. Now, using their combined power, he'd done even worse. He struggles with a thought that his powers could be used to hurt those he loves. Now we go back to the hollow reassurances of our friends. Shit, that's heavy. So how about we go look for the ferryman again? Maybe this time he'll be fine. As we enter the town, we see the postman finding the shipwreck. Our additional scenes are predominantly about him dealing with the young girl inside of the wreck. He asks her questions and she doesn't respond. This poor dummy. Next we see him returning with bread. She eats it with a fervor. He continues to question her, but she doesn't answer. Eventually he decides She needs a name, so he names her Louise. This seems to make the child feel better, and he has something to call her. His next visit, he notes that she has a new red bag. Obviously, she found it on the ship. He has no bread to bring her, but he hands her a ribbon. He ties it in her hair. Louise is grateful. He wants her to stand in the sun to see her new look in the mirror. She retreats and doesn't seem interested. She does seem intrigued by this invitation to go outside and check out the sea, though. His next visit, the postman notes that she hasn't been eating much lately and begs her to eat more. To cheer her up, he hums a song for her. This is the first time she's hearing a song. She makes an attempt and he's impressed, although she appears to be not very well practiced. We also get a scene of Emil and Kaine outside of town. Kaine senses a presence in town and she convinces Emil that they go check it out. I mean, I think their power levels are over 9,000 or something. Now we get to see that the postman has been teaching Louise to write, and she's been making good attempts. He asks her to come to live with him, and this is just a bridge too far for her at this junction. He notices blood on the floor at her feet. He imagines the worst thing he can think of. Next, Tyron tells Kaine he can smell something awful in the bottom of the boat. They both know what's going on. Next, we catch a glimpse of Louise sitting alone. She thinks that the postman left because of her body. She doesn't understand. All she wants is to talk to him and have him not be afraid of her. What she wants is to be human and to look at the sun. The reason she's been eating the villagers is due to a mistaken idea that it will make her become human. Now, when the gang stumbles on Louise, Tyron immediately notes her power. When the postman asks about how to deal with a woman's time of the month, you know why now.
I've been keeping an eye on her. She's well enough to leave. Hey, so this is kind of awkward, but the girl is, you know, bleeding. I brought a bunch of bandages with me, but well, how exactly does one deal with a woman's time of the month? Sorry. Clearly clear the line there. Forget I said anything.
When the ship breaks and the postman falls, you can see that she went to rescue him immediately. She has a true and deep love for him. Now during this fight, you can hear Louise talking. She's sad that her human diet did not make her become human. The one person who treated her kindly is now afraid of her. She wants to fix things. This is how Kaine knew to take the postman hostage earlier. Louise truly believes that she'll be able to become human. She again tries to communicate with the postman, but he can't hear her. From her perspective, she's done everything she needs to do to be with him. For the postman, he hears none of this and only sees a monster that lied to him about its identity. It was all a lie. Louise dies sad about her hideous body, but grateful for the world that's so full of beauty. After this, Kaine has a moment where she finds a letter Louise wrote for the postman. Tyron asks her what it says, and she tears it up. NieR asks Kaine how she knew about Louise protecting the postman. She keeps her secrets. Next, back to Facade. As we enter the desert, we see a cutscene with the pack leader of the wolves. He complains that the humans have turned the forests into deserts. He knows they can't win a battle of direct conflict with the humans. He has belief that the humans can learn to live alongside others. This proves to be inaccurate. Some of the men of the mask have taken upon themselves to attack the wolves right at their den. Those wolves won't spoil a perfectly good royal wedding, that's for sure. When the wolves return to see their brethren slain, the war is on. After the incident at the wedding, the wolves take accounting of their numbers. The pack leader tells them if they run, they can escape to somewhere else. The wolves howl and vow to die together as a pack with honor. Once the king has landed the whole killing blow, the pack leader asks what they've done to draw the ire of man. And we get a sliver of the wolf's memory. He once had an owner. This old man lets go of him at the end of his days and asks only that he is remembered. On his deathbed, the wolf honors the promise. This game makes you love and hate everyone simultaneously. Now it's time for the Shadowlord's domain to see ending B. Once inside, the first few scenes are essentially the same. Once in the ballroom, when Kaine is impetuously opening the door, we learn that the balls that come pouring out of the door are actually baby shades. The shades have found their way to procreate. As you destroy them, the shades are begging you to spare their children. Dark. We've destroyed tons of these. As a reminder, these shades were once humans. This time, we can hear Tyron telling Kaine that her heart is changing. Something's happening. There's more than hatred and sadness in there. He tries to spurn her on and encourage her worst instincts, but Kaine fights him off. She is definitely changing. Again, the group are reinforced by the king and the masked men. This time there are supplemental scenes, however. The boar shade criticizes the king for taking the lives of his family. The two stubborn warriors die side by side, and the king tells Fira he will see her soon. In the final battle against Shadowlord, Tyron finally has got to know what's going on with Kaine. She explains that he's no longer the only voice in her life. NieR accepts her, and she's tired of living in this world and living in general, but she promises to become NieR's sword one last time. In the Shadowlord fight, we can understand its cries, but we didn't really need to anyways, as the events in and of themselves made it clear of his feelings. He mourns the loss of his Yona. Without her there, there's no point in living in this world. He tells her soon he will join her, which we know to be true, based on ending A. We see the Shadowlord apologizing for failing his sister. After all the years of trying, he couldn't unify her with its shell, as it were. It then flashes back to their human days. It's mainly just Yona being adorable. It flashes back to his spirit, which is quickly reunited with Yona. Solid ending. Big fan of this one. Wait, what's that? There's an end credits? Yep, Emil made it out. But this will not surprise the NieR Automata crowd. Although for now he is without a body, merely a flesh wound. At least things ended alright for someone, I suppose. Now we've completed our 2 playthroughs. Maybe more accurately, 1.5 playthroughs. This would be a strange place to stop in the video for those who've made it this far, but someone playing the game, I would probably advise this be where they stop playing unless they're very committed. Why after coming all this way, you ask? Because playthrough C has very little deviation from playthrough B. I'll illuminate the differences I found, but I want to make it clear they could easily be looked up on YouTube or something, as opposed to large differences in the first 2 playthroughs. Now that I made that disclaimer, I present to you playthrough C. Having said all that, I beat I got every ending the first time I played it, and every ending this time. So maybe I'm just a hypocrite. But that's just being like a honest recommendation based on respecting other people's time. So yeah, now that I made that disclaimer, I present to you playthrough C. Okay, Route C. The first deviation is new cutscenes that add context to the fact that Devla and Popola were leading NieR by the nose the whole time to find the way back to the Shadowlord. This gives you a slight insight into the minds of Devla and Popola. They wanted him to find the keys, but they were also aware of the girl Louise who washed ashore. They also were aware of her desire to become human, but they also note it'd be impossible without a receptacle. They have a backup plan where they'd utilize her power to subdue the Shadowlord. Clearly, this never comes to pass. The two also reminisce about the time spent with NieR and feel guilty about betraying him. Ultimately, their mission was to reunite the Shadowlord with his shell, and it must be done. That is their ultimate goal because it was their only purpose in being made. These new extra scenes are few and far between. The next new scene takes place with the fight against Louise on the ship. Route C has an extended finish to the fight. The fight is longer, but the cutscene remains the same. Also, after the crew leaves Seafront, there's an alternate scene where Kaine delivers Louise's letter to the postman rather than tearing it up. The postman is very well aware that Louise was a shade that did horrible things, but seeing that she managed to make a scribble for him and make a note brings tears to his eyes. He still sees her as more than just a shade. After Emil saves Kaine and NieR, there's an extended text segment. It details him watching his body disintegrate around him. He's imminently aware of his death. But as he dies, he remembers his sister, and it brings light to his darkness. Promise. This story is a flashback to Emil's childhood. Halua wakes Emil up and quickly smushes him. Her plan is to hide for their teacher, who will be arriving imminently. As children are known to do, they cannot contain themselves as their teacher arrives, and they laugh under the blankets. This causes the dust to crop up, and both of them begin to sneeze. Their instructor is kind-hearted and settles them down, although clearly amused by their antics. She takes their temperature, and Emil recollects that he was very fond of her. Emil's parents died in an accident years back, and him and Halua had been told this was an orphanage. But the medical testing leads them to press X to doubt. Even with all the medical tests, the two of them can make it because they have each other and their kind teacher. Today is a special day, though. She hands Emil a present. Once he opens it, the present is revealed to be the same cookies always given at the facility, but because it came from the teacher, it gains extra importance. Halua gets the same cookies and eats them quickly and happily. She has her own gift for her brother. It's a hand-drawn portrait made with every color on the box. Scrawled across it is the message, "Happy birthday, Emil." He hugs his sister and thanks her. With his sister and teacher there, this is Emil's happiest moment. This is when he snaps awake. He's grateful that this will be the last memory as he dies. He again apologizes for how things happened to his sister. He wakes up again, and it's Halua. He's not dead yet. She promised she would always watch over him, and she's here to reassure him that he needs to know that she has remained true to this promise. Unfortunately, she's out of magic now. Emil begs her not to leave, and meanwhile she makes Emil promise that he'll live. For the both of them. He's awakened, not by the darkness, but by the sky. He doesn't know where he is, but he'll be okay now, knowing she'll always be by his side. This segment hits extra hard if he did the side quest to find the letter from his mother figure. The teacher is clearly that woman, and this is yet another story that just hits me. Who am I kidding? I'm the target audience for this shit. All this crap hits me. What about you guys? Any of you guys make it this far? Wait, what about ending C, you ask? Okay. So in order to get ending C, you need a couple of things. First and foremost, you need to have collected every single weapon in the game. A few of them are from quests, many of them can be bought, a few of them can be found in various areas of the game. At this point, you've had plenty of opportunity, and anyone who's made it this far probably has them collected. You're at the final dungeon for the third time at this point. You have every weapon collected. At this point, you play through to the end and defeat the Shadowlord per usual. This time, Tyron is taunting Kaine. The Skrull is finally winning the fight for her body. Tyron reminisces about what a great job they did becoming a killing machine for years and years. Her heart has changed though, and it seems to be affecting Tyron. NieR doesn't understand what's going on. Before she finally goes berserk, she tells NieR that without Emil to stop her, NieR needs to do it. He needs to kill her. It's her final request. Of course, NieR just stands there like an idiot as she goes full berserk shade.
Emil is all right. So there's no anyone but me. Please, before it comes to that, I want you to kill me. Consider it final request.
During this fight, Kaine begs NieR to run. This is also the first time when Tyron speaks directly to NieR. This is the first time NieR is finding out about this persona at all that's always lived inside of Kaine. Tyron tells NieR he has two choices to save Kaine. Once she's defeated in battle, Tyron tells NieR to thrust his sword through Kaine's heart and deliver her the death she's been longing for. The other option is one that could make her a normal human being again. We'll come to that option in a moment. For now, let's release Kaine from her suffering. NieR asks Tyron why the shade that lives inside Kaine would want to help her, and he replies, probably the same reason you are. Clearly this answer is left open to interpretation, but to me, I took that as Tyron also has fallen in love with Kaine. That's just what I believe. So for ending C, we choose to free Kaine from her burden. Tyron returns to tell NieR, in the years living inside of Kaine, he felt all of her pain, all of her emotions. He tormented her from within. He tells NieR that Kaine is finally free now. She has been forgiven and is saved. She also left NieR with a final message.
Oh wait, she had a message for you. Thank you.
So rewind time. What happens if you choose to save Kaine? In order to do so, NieR must sacrifice his own existence. He disappears from the world, but Kaine can become human again. By choosing this option, all of your data is erased. You watch as all of your accomplishments are deleted. They do it in a painstakingly slow process as well. Kaine awakens with Yona at her side. Yona asks if Kaine was the one who saved her. She thanks Kaine, and Kaine is truly grateful. Something is wrong, though. She doesn't feel happy. Yona picks up the lunar tear given to her from NieR, and there's no direct realization there. Kaine is crying, but she doesn't know why. She says it's like she just found something special. I took this to mean she understood the importance of the flower without knowing exactly why. This was the original end of the game I played in 2017. No positive resolution without something equally dour to bring you down. Although this ending tore me to pieces, as popular media has worn me down to a simple man that wants the man to get the girl, good defeats bad, the story was not that simple, and I loved it for it. Now in this new incarnation of the game, there's a new ending, ending E. This ending will lead to a different path. I'll take you on a trail to find that ending, and then when it's all said and done, I'll discuss how I feel about the new edition. Firstly, your file's been deleted. You'll have to create a new file and play through as though you're brand new. Good news, you don't have to do any of the side content. And you know what you're doing, so you can burn through the beginning of the game. The bad news, you lost all of your grindings. You're back to level 1 missionary style blade with no buffs. This game is easy though, so it's still very manageable, but just regrettable nonetheless. You're required to play through the game again until you come across the second battle with Scar, the giant shade in the Aerie. After this battle, Kaine lays on the floor. The first run through, NieR and Vice ran over to her and gave her a speech about friendship being the reason to still live. This time, instead of the words boosting her out of her slumber, she awakens in her trailer outside of the Aerie. I know I shouldn't keep calling this thing a trailer, but come on. She's crying. She was dreaming about someone and she awakens filled with sadness with the feeling that she's forgotten something important. It's been 3 years now since she saved Yona in this NieR-less world, and she feels the victory was hollow. Something's missing. Also note that she has Emil's scepter at her bedside, just something cool they thought to include. Kaine decides to visit Yona, but stops to aid an old man being attacked by shades on the side of the road. He directs her to the Forest of Myth. Let me just say that Yona is significantly more fun to play around with than NieR. Instead of magic with Vice at his side, Yona's skill slots are there to add combo potential with no MP gauge to concern yourself with. Inside the Forest of Myth, the people have been attacked and they're laying dead on the floor. The divine tree has the runes from the lost shrine on it and is summoning these very steampunk robot creations from it. Kaine delves into the tree stump. Inside is a giant tunnel. The systems inside remind Kaine that she's just a replicant, but she remembers none of this. Remember the story about the tree storing memories until the shade started eating them? Well, now it's clear. This entire location was a facility for documenting mankind. The documentation is still taking place to this day, even including Kaine destroying the last hopes for Project Gestalt. With the original Gestalt and Replicant gone, that ship has sailed. The tree begins manufacturing these little shits here. They are clearly offshoots of the mainframe. Kaine doesn't give a crap, though. They summon a security robot that is easily dispatched by Kaine. Next, after having watched Kaine for ages, they try to replicate her and duplicate her power. These clones are a joke, however, and Kaine is insulted. They don't try and duplicate her power, though, exactly. They merely attempt to outnumber her. They never tire. Once destroyed, they immediately reconstruct themselves. Eventually, even Kaine tires of this.
You little fuckers.
Kaine! Hey, are you okay?
Emil?
You bet. Anywho.
For some reason, Emil has 4 arms now. Did he always have 4 arms? Never mind, more bots to kill. As Kaine and Emil destroy the Kaine copies, the machines recount Emil's life story, which seemed to make him uncomfortable. During this fight, Kaine seems to remember having a friend that used to fight alongside them. The computer finds this fascinating. Emil opens a path, and the two of them find a doorway to pass through. The boy and girl say behind the door lies what was lost. It appears to be a replica of a present-day city. Or, like our present day. More importantly though, Kaine asks Emil about the 4 arms thing. Disappointingly, he doesn't give her a direct answer. Once they reach the replica of the garden at the Shadowlord's castle, things start to come into motion in Kaine's brain. Emil also seems to have the same memory fog as her. He remembers making a promise to someone. He thinks perhaps he promised to eat something delicious. Time to get those memories back. Now it's clear as day. This is a city long since gone. The two do not focus on this, as their desire is to fix their memory, and that trumps all other thoughts. They come to a room with a core that the boy voice claims contains all the information the forest had stored, including Kaine's lost memories. Suddenly, after smacking this thing a few times, memories start pouring out in the voice of NieR. The destruction of the cube takes her to some place entirely new. Well, to some. She's into the database that contains her memories and her whole world. The first memory block reminds her of what shades are. They remind her of how many former humans she's mercilessly killed on her journey. They remind her that she's a replicant. They call her a foreign body in this world. The next cube reminds her of her poor old Beepy and Khalil. The next memory reminds her of Gretel and the Shade Friends. Gretel gives her a message that friends keep us strong in spite of everything. Finally, the boy and girl descend upon her with her worst memory. Yes, it's the shade that killed her grandmother, whose flame must be extinguished the final time. At one point, the camera pans and all this happens. I'll be frank. I assume that all these frail people were copies of the villagers shooting magic at her based on Kaine yelling that she'll save her, but I'm not sure. The creature charges up its magic, and you realize that without NieR's magic, you're limited at range. Eventually, the sheer number of enemies get the best of Kaine. She wakes up surrounded by villagers in our very last text log. It seems like the Aerie and the villagers are treating her characteristically shitty. She hears a call, and it's none other than her grandma. Is this a dream, she asks herself? If it is, then she doesn't care. Grandma forgot our medicines. They need to go to the apothecary. Kaine tells her that she'll do it and watches her as her grandma recedes into the distance. Here for Callie's medicine, are you? The apothecary questions. He starts making it, and the aromas remind her of her childhood. That's a fine portrait you drew of your grandma. Just like her, it does. The idea of Callie showing off the drawing to others in town burns Kaine to the core. But it's been a long time since I saw something so wonderful. The drawing was shit. Kaine was sure of it. Hearing to the contrary had Kaine confused. The apothecary was extremely kind, and it was off-putting to Kaine. She thanks him for the medicine, and as she turns to leave, she hears a loud thud from the back of the shop. When she approaches, she can hear him scream from inside of her mind. My leg! Oh God, where is my leg? His leg is gone now. Help me, he screams. Soon his fingers begin to vanish, then his hand, then his other hand. The man collapses into a pile of ash. The Aerie is going up into flames. Villagers running around, exploding into dust. Grandma, she thinks. She runs straight to their home. She arrives home to a pile of ash. Her grandma calls out faintly, Kaine. In a mad dash, she digs a small blackened form out of the darkness. As they try and escape, they're hit by a tsunami of ash and knocks them to the floor. A quick look shows that she's missing a leg below the knee. As she carries her grandmother, the load gets lighter and lighter. Again, faintly, Thank you, Kaine. The last of her grandmother drifts to the floor in a pile of ash. She attempts to dig up the ashes on the floor, but can't distinguish the difference between her grandmother and the rest of the collapsed village. As she sifts through the pile of debris, she comes across her grandma's shawl. Kaine berates herself as she knew the place was a lie, but she still couldn't stop all the horrible things from happening. There's no reason to live here. Not in this place. Suddenly, a new voice interjects.
I say, can you hear me?
Moments later.
Now then, you wish to get him back, hmm?
Kaine doesn't know what the voice could be talking about.
For the love of all the heavens, I always did know you were a handful.
Kaine is annoyed by this voice, but there's also warmth and familiarity there.
Are you truly so daft that you have already forgotten one of your beloved traveling companions and friends?
This causes a surge of recognition in Kaine. She remembers that she was searching for a lost friend. The ash world is collapsing around her.
Do hurry back now, hussy. The matter? Do you still not remember him? You've not to become lost in your thoughts.
Okay. Get him back!
It's very therapeutic to be able to say, you can kill this shade for the last time now. You now have the aid of Vice's magic to help you. This fight is much easier with magic. Now it's Kaine's turn for the inspirational speech to summon a friend back to the world of the living.
Shut up! I already made up my mind. Nobody tells me what to do. I swore I would be a sword. I swore that I would be your. Do you hear? So I am going to get you back, and I don't care it takes. Who the fuck do you think you are to just up and disappear like that, huh? I'm who gets to decide what my life means to me. My life. I'll do whatever I want with it. So quit wasting like a brainless fuck and get your ass back here now!
Bringing NieR back recovers your save file, kind of. Completionists can still complete more things from the save. More importantly, though, NieR's back.
I leave the rest to you, hussy.
Journey may have been meaningless.
Our past may have been a mistake.
But we're not going back.
Even if this world comes to an end.
Because this is the world with the people we cherish.
Kaine's final message rings to me as her acknowledging that their actions may have doomed the humans, as they essentially ruined the Project Gestalt, but they don't care about any of it. All that matters is each other. At least that's how I interpret it. And with that, one of the most beautiful games I've ever played is now done. And also, thankfully, my recap portion is also done. Okay, so clearly we've made it this far. Obviously, I love this game. The soundtrack should start this moment of recognition. It does not stop hitting you from all sides. It brings 7 different kinds of smoke. If this game wants you to be sad, then you're hit with a track that slams your heartstrings. Want to be jubilant? They throw you a track that will get you skipping. Each bit of level environment has its own distinct atmosphere, and the soundtrack paves the way for all of them. I don't speak about music very often, as I have no real knowledge of music theory, and I feel as though I'm speaking out of my arena if I say much more than, I like this, or I don't like that. When it comes to NieR, I love it, and even acknowledging my lack of musical knowledge, I do not understand how anyone could disagree with me on this one. Very much linked to the music is the high quality of the voice cast. I find it difficult to point out anyone specific, as all of the performances brought the characters to life. The brilliant writing only pays off because these voice actors delivered them so believably. Much like the music, I don't have much else to say other than these people embodied the characters, and the characters would lack the same soul without their representation. Themes. So this game has a few themes, and it slams you hard with them. You would have to be a bonehead not to see how almost everyone in this game has disdain for others of some type. In NieR's village, its people despise the shades. In the Aerie, it's basically outsiders in general. In Facade, the wolves and men of the mask can't stop killing each other. The Gestalts hate the replicants hate the Gestalts, and the people of the Forest of Myth, well damn, they're just kind of vibing now that I think about it. The whole world is comprised of people who are judging others, while the main cast is a crew of misfits, and NieR accepts them with open arms. He's oblivious, however, to anything that might say about his other prejudices. Another thing it hammers home is context. If any of these characters were concerned with seeing the other side at all, a ton of conflict could be resolved. If NieR stopped to take stock, he might have noticed that the shades on the Northwest Plains don't even attack. You as a player are not likely to notice until later parts of your run that these smaller shades drop items like coloring books. You're murdering the gestalts of young children. Facade and the wolves is hard. They can't communicate, so I understand some of the hardship there, but at no point did either side call a truce. Kind of hard for me to ask the wolves to back down and run away before the final assault. Go ahead, wolves, be the bigger men. Yeah, probably not. The creator of this game was Yoko Taro, and he wants you to consider the mundanity of the slaughter in video games. You as the player are an active and willing participant, and you don't ever consider the context of that slaughter. Or at the very least, you seldom do. This game was making a point, and I consider it a point well made. He will further hammer that point home in its sequel. On a storytelling front, there are a lot of moments told in big blocks of text. This has two functions. First and foremost, the original game was cheaply made, as evidenced by the reused environments and the loop of doing the same areas over and over again. Having large segments told in text is just flat out cost effective. Reason the second, this game changes camera angles and gameplay styles, and it's always trying to keep you on your toes. Having a text-based adventure squeezed in the middle was just keeping in tone as far as I'm concerned. As a player, I enjoyed the break in the game and the pause to read a really well thought out story with great music backing it. If anyone feels differently than me here, I'm fine to agreeing to disagree. I'm the type who likes to 100% complete the games I really fancy. I got some beef with these achievements though. This is a game I did not complete on either run. On both runs, I came to a blockade with the weapon upgrade farming. In all honesty, I probably would have still ground that out if it weren't for one achievement for speedrunning the game in 15 hours. I'm typically the guy who enjoys getting those final few achievements, but it feels like they were made by someone who didn't understand the game. The game was not meant to be rushed through. It was meant to be savored, to see all the content. Once you've done what it actually takes to complete this game, the thought of coming back and running through it again seems like against the spirit of things. I mean, plus, how many times are they going to ask you to play this fucking game? Even to someone who likes it. I know this is a dumb gripe section, but I'm putting it in here because it bothered me enough to want to say something. I want achievements to enhance my gameplay experience and motivate me to see more of the game or to do better at the game. I don't feel the existing achievements do that job well. There's a new segment called the Recycle World. If you interact with NieR's mother's diary, it sends you to a world where you play as the Gestalt version of NieR. I liked the idea of this zone until I played it. It wasn't a particularly difficult combat challenge, so it didn't really satisfy me in that way. I'd hoped I could farm weapon upgrade materials since that task is so ridiculously hard. It turns out that it's not very efficient at that task either. In the end, the biggest value I got out of it was hearing the voice of the original actor, and I appreciate his newly rendered appearance. It was a cool idea, but quickly it outstayed its welcome for me, and it didn't have a mechanical benefit for me doing it, really. It would be nice to have a patch added so the shades could have drops, and so that you could, run these over and over again and farm those materials that are hard to get, but I doubt this will ever happen. I don't want to scoff at the obvious work done to bring back the original voice actor and remodel him in-game for what amounts to an Easter egg. I appreciate the thought. I just didn't really care for the execution. I wanted to make a short segment speaking about the new version of the game. For those who would have questions about the differences between Replicant and Gestalt. Again, I prefaced at the beginning of this video it wasn't going to be ultra thorough, but it still deserves a statement. Gestalt featured an old man version of NieR who was Yona's father, and not her brother. Originally, I was certain I was going to start up this Replicant version with a silly JRPG kid version of NieR and immediately hate it. Part of the thing that drew me to this game so hard in the first place was being a young father, well, maybe not that young. I identified with NieR's struggle to protect his daughter. Having said that, I'm a brother of a sister as well. Having played this game, the younger version of NieR works better for the story that's being told. I may have identified with him searching for his daughter in the first game, but the friendship between him and Kaine was kind of clunky and kind of seemed silly. Even with their superb voice acting performances, they just couldn't sell that relationship the same way they could in this version. There's also just an art design perspective. The original NieR was a lovable reject. He was literally defective looking. The new NieR is the fifth musketeer look. It just works for me. Surely they've changed more than a voice actor and a character model, though, I can hear you say. Honestly, it's surprising how many pieces fell into place with very little work or rewrites required. It's still very much the same game, with almost the exact same dialogue. The new additions to the game, including the red-bagged ferryman and his wife, the postman and the shade on the boat, and the new ending, I could say that I universally appreciate all of this, even if the extra ending has its caveats. I'm certain some would wish they went further with visual upgrades. I'm kind of grateful they didn't. There comes a point with more polish that it would rub off some of the rust that made the original art design shine. This game was never a high poly showpiece, and I'm glad they managed to keep the original style so recognizable. I've said my piece about the combat at this point. I think they've done their best to polish it up, and it's completely serviceable. I think it's far better than the original game, and I'm grateful for what they've done. I came to this game for all those words I spit out earlier about this story. The new ending. Let's just say it. It plays like fan fiction. Here's the thing. This game was made by a new dev who is a fan of the original. The ending actually is kind of fan fiction, if you think of it that way. If you needed your happier ending, this gave it to you in spades while tying in stories from this game and tying it into the next game as well. I think it was extremely competently made. The PC version notwithstanding, I did do all the, install the mods and whatever. Don't worry about that. I don't think this game needed a new ending, but this ending detracts nothing from my love or satisfaction of this game. Also, it's mechanically more convenient to have the game be able to restore your save for trophy crap after you finish the game. The last time, you did ending D, your file was just deleted. So you were like afraid to finish the game until you've done all your trophy crap. This is a good idea, I think. So basically, before you just had to save scum and abuse cloud saves to be able to, keep your save, which kind of ruins the point of that ending, really. I just wish they could have made it another choice off the last ending, though. Making you play even more of the game for a person who's just so thoroughly completed this game over and over again seems kind of sadistic. Like, I know it probably took me an hour and a half to go from the beginning of the game to where the playthrough E starts, but that's an hour and a half that didn't need to happen, at least by the way I feel. The cast of characters in this game left an indelible impression in my heart, and they'll never be forgotten. I hate that the game itself will always be compared to its sequel. Like, they don't do that like for other series, but I think just because this kind of it feels to me like this game lives in the sequel's shadow, and nobody goes, man, Gears of War 1 sucks because Gears of War 2 is so much better. It's a sequel. It's supposed to be more polished. But if those comparisons have to be made, I'll try and clarify my stance. NieR Automata is a better game than NieR Replicant. Again, earlier, I don't know if you heard. That game is my favorite game I've ever played. It stands to reason that it's the better game, as it's the successful execution of the ideas that were bred in NieR Replicant. Better technology and more time should lead to a better execution of a game. However, NieR Replicant's story and characters hold up to any game. If you're a person who came and watched this video, thank you. Also, I recommend this game wholeheartedly. At least through ending B anyways. Thank you sincerely to any who came, and even more thanks to those who stayed. Feel free to comment if you have anything to add, or if I got something egregious wrong. I started off trying to compress 50 hours of footage down to a reasonable length. I feel so passionately about this story that I failed really to compress a lot, because I didn't want my Cliff's Notes version compromising the message. Tell me how I did. I've been out of school a long time, and my note-taking is it's bad. I'm positive the minute this video is posted, I'll think of a point I wanted to make, and I'll hate myself for not making it. I also am positive that there will be stuff that I failed to edit properly. I'll have like one frame of a black frame or something that I screwed up with. I'm sorry for any failures in the video. It's just going to be super long, and I'm not good at things or stuff. Stuff and things. I'm bad at them both. I will make a NieR Automata video much like this eventually, but it's going to be a while. This project was insane. I can't believe how much work this was. And I'm just a nobody doing this for fun, so... In the interim, I'll probably make some smaller videos, but know somewhere in the back burners will be some NieR footage filling up on my hard drive. Thanks again to everyone. Peace in the Middle East, rain in Spain, word to Big Bird.